You expect me to believe that's your ticket, a gate agent's laughter. That's all it took to set a catastrophe in motion. At Atlanta's Hartsfield, Jackson Airline staff openly mocked a young black teen in a hoodie clutching an economy ticket. They pointed, they whispered, they dismissed him. What they didn't know was that this teen flying to New York wasn't just another passenger. He was Malik Reynolds, and his father didn't just work for the airline. He owned the entire fleet, the terminals, and the very ground they stood on. The flight was about to become the most expensive lesson in humility they would ever learn. The air in Hartsfield, Jackson, Atlanta International was thick with the usual Monday morning chaos. It was a symphony of rolling suitcases, garbled announcements, and the stressed sighs of travelers running on too little sleep and too much caffeine. At Gate C-45, the line for SkyLink Air Flight 347 to New York. JFK was already a coiled serpent of impatient passengers all pretending not to stare at each other's luggage and outfits. Malik Reynolds stood near the charging station trying to coax a final 10% of life into his phone. He was indistinguishable from any other college student on a budget. A well-worn gray hoodie was pulled up over his head, and a pair of noise-canceling headphones rested around his neck, a temporary shield against the terminal's den. His backpack, a high-end Toomey his father had given him, was scuffed and faded from being kicked under countless dorm room desks. He blended in perfectly, which was exactly how he liked it. His father, James Reynolds, had insisted on it. "You will never understand this company, Malik." He'd said, his voice, a calm baritone that commanded boardrooms if you only ever see it from the front cabin. "The lifeblood of SkyLink Air is in economy. It's the family flying to see a relative, the student flying home. You fly with them. You see what we're doing right, and you see, more importantly, what we're doing wrong." Malik respected the lesson, even if it meant a middle seat in row 28. The boarding process was delayed, and the tension at the gate was rising. The gate agent, a woman in her late 40s named Karen, was clearly having a terrible day. Her SkyLink Air uniform was impeccable, but her smile was a tight, painted-on grimace. Her voice, amplified by the PA system, was sharp. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are still waiting on clearance for the inbound crew. Please do not crowd the podium. I will make an announcement when we are ready to board." A man in an expensive-looking suit. Richard Bennett scoffed loudly. "This is ridiculous. I'm in first. 1A. I have a connection at JFK to London. This is unacceptable." Karen's demeanor shifted instantly. Her grimace melted into a fawning, apologetic smile. "Sir, I understand completely. Let me see if I can get you any updated information. I do apologize for the inconvenience." Malik watched the exchange, noting the immediate change in her tone. A few minutes later, Malik's phone was hovering at 15%. He zipped his backpack and approached the podium, waiting patiently for Karen to finish her hushed, important-sounding conversation on the phone. When she finally slammed the receiver down, she looked at him, and the grimace returned. "What?" she snapped. Malik didn't flinch. "Excuse me, ma'am. I just had a quick question about the boarding zones. My ticket says Zone 5, but I saw the family boarding call." Karen cut him off with a loud, exasperated sigh. She didn't even look at his ticket. She looked at his hoodie, his worn backpack, and his face. "Zone 5, she said, drawing the words out as if speaking to a child. "Boards after Zone 4. Which boards after priority? Which boards after first class? You will be one of the last people on this plane. Is that simple enough for you?" Malik felt a familiar heat rise in his neck. "I was just asking," the app said. "I don't care what the app said," Karen retorted, her voice rising. "I am the one in charge of this gate. You will board when I call your number. Go sit down." It was the sit down that stung. It was the tone one used for a misbehaving dog. Richard Bennett, the man from first class, had been listening from his seat nearby. He let out a short, barking laugh. Kid's probably never flown before, he said to Karen, loud enough for the entire gate to hear. Thinks his economy ticket gets him special treatment. This to Malik's horror. made Karen crack a real smile. She covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook with suppressed laughter. She caught Richard's eye and shared a look of mutual disdainful amusement. "Go on now," Karen said to Malik, her voice dripping with condescension. "We'll make sure the plane doesn't leave without you." The entire gate area was quiet, watching. Malik saw faces of pity, faces of second-hand embarrassment, and faces of quiet agreement. He was the kid in the hoodie with the cheap ticket, and he had just been put in his place. Elena Rodriguez, a younger Hispanic woman, glanced up from the adjacent counter. Her name tag identified her as another gate agent. She looked uncomfortable, but quickly averted her eyes and continued typing, unwilling or unable to intervene. Malik just nodded slowly, the heat in his neck turning to a cold, sharp focus. He didn't say who he was. He didn't say his father's name. He just held Karen's gaze for a long second, memorizing her face. "Thank you for your help," he said, voice quiet but steady. He turned and walked back to his seat, the sound of Karen's quiet snicker and Richard's chuckle following him all the way. He pulled out his phone and sent a simple text. "Dad boarding process at C-45 in Atlanta is interesting. We'll talk when I land." James Reynolds didn't believe in silver spoons or shortcuts. Despite owning one of America's fastest-growing airlines, SkyLink, with a fleet of over 200 aircraft and terminals in 45 cities, he believed in earning every inch of success. That philosophy extended to his only son, Malik. "You can't lead what you don't understand from every angle," James had told Malik just yesterday in their sprawling Atlanta home. His father's home office was lined with model airplanes, not decorative ones, but precise engineering models showing the evolution of commercial aviation. James had started as a baggage handler 30 years ago, worked his way up through maintenance operations, and finally purchased his first small regional carrier after securing investors who believed in his vision. "But Dad, I've flown on our planes dozens of times," Malik had protested, his engineering textbook still open on his lap. He'd been studying for his senior year finals, not planning a cross-country trip in economy. James had fixed him with that steady gaze, the same one that had convinced bankers to loan millions to a black man with dreams of owning an airline in an industry with precious few people who looked like him. "In first class with the crew, knowing exactly who you are," James said. "That's not the same as experiencing what our average customer experiences. If you're going to help run this company someday, you need to see it from every perspective." Malik knew better than to argue. Besides, his father was right. He always was. At 17, Malik was already being groomed to understand the business, not just inherit it. While his friends spent summers at beach houses, Malik rotated through every department at SkyLink, from reservations to maintenance to flight operations. His true passion was aviation engineering. Where his father saw business challenges, Malik saw mechanical ones. His bedroom was filled with diagrams of aircraft systems, fluid dynamics, textbooks, and his own designs for more efficient cabin layouts. He could name every part of a Boeing 737 and understood the physics of flight in ways that sometimes surprised even veteran pilots. But understanding machines was different from understanding people. That was the lesson his father wanted him to learn now. Take notes, James had instructed, handing Malik an economy ticket. Mental ones. Don't write anything down that identifies you, just observe. How are people treated? What works, what doesn't? When you land in New York, call me. We'll discuss what you saw. What James didn't say, but Malik understood, this was a test. One of many. James Reynolds hadn't built an airline empire by accident, and he wasn't going to let his son take it over without proving he had the vision to carry it forward. Malik had one advantage his father didn't know about: a nearly photographic memory. He could recall conversations verbatim, remember faces indefinitely, and notice details others missed. It was what made him excellent with mechanical systems. Now he would turn that same observation to the human elements of air travel. Standing at gate C-45, Malik recalled his father's final words before he left for the airport. Remember, leadership isn't about a seat assignment. It's about seeing problems clearly enough to fix them permanently. If only his father could see the problems unfolding right before his eyes. Next question, Karen Walsh announces with exaggerated patience, looking past Malik to the growing line behind him. This young man needs to step aside and wait for Zone 5. Malik doesn't move immediately. I was just wondering if there's family boarding available. The app mentioned Karen cuts him off with a loud, exasperated sigh. She doesn't even look at his boarding pass again. Her eyes stay fixed on his hoodie, his worn backpack, and most notably his face. Zone 5, she says, drawing the words out as if speaking to a child. Boards after Zone 4. Which boards after priority? Which boards after first class? You will be one of the last people on this plane. Is that simple enough for you? Malik feels a familiar heat rise in his neck. I was just asking. The app said I don't care what the app said. Karen retorts, her voice rising. I am the one in charge of this gate. You will board when I call your number. Go sit down. It's the sit down that stings. It's the tone one uses for a misbehaving dog. Richard Bennett, the first-class passenger, has been listening from his seat nearby. He lets out a short, barking laugh. Kid probably never flown before he says to Karen loud enough for the entire gate to hear. Thinks his economy ticket gets him special treatment. This, to Malik's horror, makes Karen crack a real smile. She covers her mouth, but her shoulders shake with suppressed laughter. She catches Richard's eye and shares a look of mutual disdainful amusement. Go on now, Karen says to Malik, her voice dripping with condescension. We'll make sure the plane doesn't leave without you. The entire gate area is quiet watching. Malik sees faces of pity, faces of second-hand embarrassment, and faces of quiet agreement. He is the kid in the hoodie with the cheap ticket, and he has just been put in his place. At the adjacent counter, Elena glances up from her computer. She looks uncomfortable, but quickly averts her eyes and continues typing, unwilling or unable to intervene. Malik just nods slowly, the heat in his neck turning to a cold, sharp focus. He doesn't say who he is. He doesn't say his father's name. He just holds Karen's gaze for a long second, memorizing her face. Thank you for your help, he says, voice quiet but steady. He turns and walks back to his seat, the sound of Karen's quiet snicker and Richard's chuckle following him all the way. He pulls out his phone and sends a simple text. Dad boarding process at C-45 in Atlanta is interesting. We'll talk when I land. Then he watches. He observes how Karen's entire demeanor changes when she interacts with different passengers. For an elderly white woman with a first-class ticket, Karen is all smiles and assistance. For a Hispanic family trying to ensure they can sit together, she's curt but functional. For a white businessman in a rumpled suit with an economy ticket, she's professionally neutral. Malik notes each interaction, cataloging the subtle and not-so-subtle differences. His father had taught him that leadership began with observation, and right now he's observing patterns that make his stomach tighten. As he waits, he thinks about his laptop in his backpack. His senior engineering project is saved there, a proposal for improving airflow systems in commercial aircraft to reduce the spread of airborne pathogens. He'd been planning to refine it during the flight, maybe even have something impressive to show his father's engineering team when he returned. But more than his project, more than the homework, more than anything else, what occupies Malik's mind is the casual cruelty he just experienced. The assumption that he didn't belong, the laughter, the dismissal, and the way Elena, the other agent, had watched it happen without a word. Now boarding zones 4 and 5. Karen finally announces nearly 45 minutes after the confrontation. Malik stands, shoulders his backpack, and moves toward the boarding line. As he passes Elena's counter, she gives him an apologetic glance, but remains silent. He extends his boarding pass to Karen, who barely looks at him as she scans it. Enjoy your flight, she says mechanically, already looking past him to the next passenger. Thank you, Malik replies deliberately, making eye contact. I'll do my best. The jetway stretches before Malik like the gullet of some great beast swallowing passengers one by one. The generic corporate carpet muffles his footsteps as he makes his way down the narrow corridor backpack slung over one shoulder. The air is stale recycled, tinged with the faint smell of cleaning products and humanity. At the aircraft door, he's met by a flight attendant whose smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. Her blonde hair is pulled back in a tight bun. Her makeup precisely applied her SkyLink uniform, crisp and spotless. Her name tag reads Vanessa Taylor. Welcome aboard, she chirps, giving Malik's boarding pass the briefest of glances. 28B middle seat all the way to the back on your right. Please move quickly, we're trying to make up for lost time. Malik nods and enters the cabin. First-class passengers are already settled in their spacious seats being offered pre-departure beverages. He catches sight of Richard Bennett already comfortably ensconced in 2A, being handed a glass of orange juice by another flight attendant. The dividing curtain marks the sharp division between luxury and economy. As Malik passes into the main cabin, the aisle narrows, the seats compress, and the atmosphere changes. Passengers struggle with overhead bins, contort to allow others to pass, and resign themselves to the cramped quarters of a full flight. Making his way down the aisle is like swimming upstream. He receives several annoyed glares as he navigates past passengers already settled in their seats. Sorry. Excuse me. Just trying to get to my seat, he murmurs repeatedly. Finally, he reaches row 28. The window seat is already occupied by an elderly black woman with kind eyes and silver hair, carefully arranging her belongings in the seat pocket before her. Hello there, young man, she says warmly. I'm Mrs. Jackson. Looks like we'll be neighbors for a while. Malik Reynolds? He replies with a genuine smile, the first he's worn since arriving at the airport. Nice to meet you. He glances at the overhead bin, which is predictably full, stuffed to capacity with roller bags and coats. His backpack contains his 17-inch laptop, a birthday gift from his father, and he hates putting it under the seat where it might get damaged. He tries to gently nudge a soft duffel bag aside to make room, but nothing budges. Sir, a sharp voice calls from behind. It's Vanessa, the flight attendant, who greeted him. Her plastic smile is gone, replaced by naked impatience. You're holding up the entire boarding process, she says, voice loud enough to turn heads. We have to close the door. That bin is full. Your bag goes under the seat in front of you now. I understand, Malik says, trying to remain polite. It's just that my laptop is in here and it's a tight fit. Then you should have planned better, Vanessa snaps. Everyone else managed to follow the rules. You're in Zone 5. You get what's left. Sit down and put your bag under the seat or we'll have to check it to the cargo hold. The passengers around him are visibly annoyed, directing their frustration at Malik rather than the airline's bin space limitations. He feels a wave of embarrassment wash over him, being scolded like a schoolboy for a second time today. I'm trying, he says, forcing the backpack under the seat. It's too tall. He has to jam it in, bending the frame. He pushes hard, and as he does, he feels a sickening dull crack from inside the bag. His stomach drops. The laptop screen. There, see, Vanessa says, her voice laced with false brightness. All set now. Please take your seat so we can depart. She bustles away, leaving Malik to squeeze past the still empty aisle seat and settle into the cramped middle position. Mrs. Jackson gives him a sympathetic glance. Don't you worry about that one, she whispers. Some people forget they're in a service profession. Malik nods gratefully, but says nothing. He's busy cataloging every detail of this interaction as well. The different way Vanessa spoke to him versus how she'd welcomed the business class passengers. The implication that his inconvenience was his own fault rather than a structural issue with boarding processes or bin space. The public shaming rather than discreet assistance. A younger flight attendant passes by, glancing at Malik with what seems like sympathy. His name tag reads Tyler Jenkins. He's perhaps in his early 20s with sandy hair and a hesitant demeanor that suggests he's relatively new to the job. Just as the aisle seat is finally occupied by a middle-aged white man in a business suit. Martin Cooper, according to his brief, curt introduction. The captain's voice comes over the PA system. Flight attendants prepare for departure. Malik settles back, feeling the broken laptop beneath his feet, and prepares for what's already shaping up to be a very long flight. As SkyLink Flight 347 reaches cruising altitude, the difference in service between cabins becomes painfully apparent. From his middle seat in row 28, Malik has a perfect view of the theater of inequity playing out in the narrow aisle. Vanessa glides through first class with practiced grace, addressing passengers by name. More orange juice. Mr. Bennett, how is your seat, Ms. Williams? Her smile is genuine now, her posture relaxed, her tone warm and solicitous. She leans in when passengers speak, laughs at their jokes, and anticipates their needs before they're voiced. The moment she crosses the invisible barrier into economy, she transforms. Her smile tightens, her movements become efficient rather than graceful, her interactions transactional rather than personal. She doesn't make eye contact. She doesn't use names. She simply extends her hand for drink orders and moves on. Coffee or water? She asks Mrs. Jackson, already moving past before the older woman can fully articulate her preference. Water, please, and if possible. Mrs. Jackson begins. Just water, got it. Vanessa interrupts, pouring quickly and moving on. When she reaches Malik, she doesn't even speak, just raises an eyebrow in question. Water, please, he says clearly. She pours, nods curtly, and continues down the aisle. Tyler, the younger flight attendant, follows behind with the snack basket. Unlike Vanessa, he maintains the same friendly demeanor throughout the cabin. Pretzels or cookies, he asks with a genuine smile. When Mrs. Jackson requests both, explaining it's a long day of travel for her, he cheerfully obliges. When he reaches Malik, their eyes meet briefly. There's recognition there. Tyler has seen how Vanessa treated Malik during boarding. Pretzels or cookies, he asks. Cookies, please, Malik replies. Thank you. Tyler nods and hands him 2 packets. It's a small gesture of kindness, but Malik notes it carefully. Throughout the cabin call, buttons begin to illuminate. Malik watches as Vanessa responds promptly to those in first class and premium economy, but allows buttons in the main cabin to remain lit for minutes at a time. At one point, she walks directly past an illuminated button in row 22 without acknowledging it. Martin Cooper in the aisle seat sighs heavily as he tries to work on his laptop. The person in front of him has reclined fully, leaving barely enough room for his screen. They keep packing us in tighter and tighter, he grumbles to no one in particular. Next, they'll be stacking us vertically. Mrs. Jackson chuckles softly. I remember when flying was a luxury, she says, turning slightly toward Malik. People dressed up for it. The seats had room. The meals weren't just a bag of crumbs. How long have you been flying? Malik asks, genuinely curious. Oh, longer than you've been alive, young man, she says with a warm smile. My late husband worked for Pan Am back in the day. I've seen how the mighty have fallen. She leans in a bit closer. And I've seen how some people get treated better than others no matter what ticket they hold. Malik nods, understanding her meaning perfectly. My grandson is about your age, Mrs. Jackson continues. Smart as a whip, studying engineering at Georgia Tech. Every time he flies, he gets randomly selected for additional screening. Been happening since he was 14. She shakes her head. Some things don't change fast enough. As they talk, Malik observes Tyler being pulled aside by Vanessa in the galley. Her expression is stern as she gestures toward the economy cabin. Though Malik can't hear their words, the body language is clear. She's reprimanding him, likely for being too generous with the snacks. Tyler's shoulders slump slightly as he nods, his earlier cheerfulness dimmed. When he emerges from the galley to continue service, his smile is more restrained. Malik reaches for his phone to make notes on what he's observing, but then remembers his father's instruction not to document anything that might reveal his identity. Instead, he commits each detail to memory, creating a mental catalog of service failures and inequities. Above all, he notes the stark difference between the two flight attendants. Vanessa experienced but jaded, treating economy passengers as inconveniences rather than customers. Tyler, new and earnest, trying to provide good service to everyone but being actively discouraged from doing so. The pattern is consistent, measurable, and, Malik realizes with growing certainty, fixable. But only if acknowledged at a structural level. Individual complaints would never address the underlying culture that permits such disparities to exist. As these thoughts form in his mind, Malik becomes aware of something else. A faint, unusual smell coming from the wall panel beside his seat. Something acrid. Something that doesn't belong in the carefully controlled atmosphere of an aircraft cabin. He frowns, his engineering instincts suddenly alert to a potential problem far more serious than poor customer service. 2 hours into the flight, the smell has grown stronger. Malik identifies it now. The unmistakable acrid scent of electrical components overheating. As an engineering student with a focus on aviation systems, it's a smell he knows well from lab work. He glances at the wall panel beside row 28, where the smell seems strongest. Nothing visibly wrong, but his instincts tell him something isn't right behind that thin piece of plastic separating passengers from the aircraft's complex electrical systems. Mrs. Jackson notices it too. Something smells off, she murmurs, wrinkling her nose, like burned toast almost. Martin Cooper, absorbed in his spreadsheets, doesn't react. Many of the surrounding passengers seem either unaware or unconcerned, perhaps attributing the smell to food service or other normal in-flight odors. But Malik knows better. He reaches up and presses the call button. A soft chime sounds, and the button illuminates. From his seat, he can see Vanessa in the forward galley glancing up at the indicator panel. She makes eye contact with Malik, frowns slightly, and then turns back to her conversation with another crew member. The button remains lit for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. Finally, after nearly 4 minutes, Vanessa approaches, sighing visibly as she reaches row 28. "Yes," she says, not even attempting to mask her annoyance. "Excuse me," Malik says politely, but there's an unusual smell coming from this wall panel. It smells electrical, like something might be overheating. Vanessa's expression shifts from annoyed to dismissive. "We're serving coffee. That's probably what you're smelling." No, Malik insists calmly. "I know what coffee smells like. This is different. It's coming from the wall, and it's a burning electrical smell." Vanessa's eyes narrow. "Sir, I've been flying this aircraft for 8 years. I think I know what normal smells are. If there was an electrical issue, our systems would alert us. Sometimes sensors don't catch early warning signs," Malik explains. "I study aviation engineering, and this smell is consistent with—" "You study aviation engineering," Vanessa repeats with a condescending smile. "Well, I actually work on aircraft, and I'm telling you everything is fine." "Is there anything else?" Mrs. Jackson interjects. "Young man's right. I smell it too. Something's not right." Vanessa's smile doesn't waver, but her eyes harden. "Ma'am, I understand you're concerned, but I assure you both everything is normal. The coffee pots are just behind your row, and sometimes the smell can be strong." Without waiting for further discussion, she reaches up and cancels the call button. "If you need anything else, please let us know," she says, the practiced phrase devoid of any genuine offer of assistance. As she walks away, Malik exchanges a glance with Mrs. Jackson, who shakes her head slightly. She didn't even check. Mrs. Jackson whispers. Malik's concern grows, not just about the potential hazard, but about the culture that allows a legitimate safety concern to be dismissed without investigation. He knows from his studies that commercial aviation's remarkable safety record stems from layers of redundant systems and protocols, including taking all potential warning signs seriously. The smell isn't going away. If anything, it's intensifying. Malik makes a decision. He unbuckles his seatbelt and stands careful not to disturb Martin, who has dozed off despite his earlier complaints about space. He makes his way to the rear galley where Tyler is organizing drink supplies. "Excuse me," Malik says quietly. Tyler looks up, surprise registering on his face. "Hey, what's up? Everything okay?" "Not really," Malik says, keeping his voice low but firm. "There's a burning electrical smell coming from the wall panel near row 28. I reported it to Vanessa, but she dismissed it as coffee without checking." Tyler's expression turned serious. "A burning smell? You're sure? Positive? I know what overheating electronics smell like. It's getting stronger." Tyler hesitates, glancing toward the forward galley where Vanessa is chatting with another crew member. "I should get the senior flight attendant. Or you could just come check yourself," Malik suggests. "It would only take a second." After a moment's consideration, Tyler nods. "Okay, show me." They return to row 28, where Mrs. Jackson confirms the smell is still present. Tyler leans over, sniffing carefully near the wall panel. "I do smell something," he admits, frowning. But Vanessa already didn't check. Malik finishes. "She just assumed it was coffee." Tyler looks torn, caught between protocol defer to senior crew and what his own senses are telling him. Before he can decide, Vanessa appears at the end of the aisle, her expression darkening when she sees Tyler with Malik. "Everything okay here?" she asks, voice clipped. "The passenger was just reporting a smell again," Tyler begins. "Which I already addressed." Vanessa cuts in. "Tyler, we need you in the galley to prep for the second service." Tyler hesitates. "Vanessa, I think maybe we should." "Now, please," she says firmly, leaving no room for discussion. With an apologetic glance at Malik, Tyler follows Vanessa back to the galley. Malik can see them engaged in a tense conversation, with Vanessa gesturing emphatically, and Tyler's posture becoming increasingly defensive. Malik returns to his seat, frustration building. The smell is definitely stronger now. He places his hand against the wall panel, feeling for unusual warmth. The plastic is hot to the touch. This is no longer just about poor customer service. This is a potential safety issue being actively ignored. Malik thinks of his father's words about seeing problems clearly enough to fix them permanently. But first, those problems need to be acknowledged. He reaches up and presses the call button again, prepared for a more direct conversation. The cabin lights dim slightly for the mid-flight beverage service, and in that moment, Malik sees it. A faint wisp of smoke barely visible seeping from the seam where the wall panel meets the ceiling. It's so subtle that most passengers wouldn't notice, but to Malik's trained eye it confirms his worst fears. His call button has been illuminated for over 5 minutes now, with no response. Across the aisle, another passenger's call button has been similarly ignored. The flight attendants are busy with drink service starting, predictably, from the front of the aircraft. Mrs. Jackson has dozed off, her head resting against a small pillow propped against the window. Martin Cooper continues working on his laptop, seemingly oblivious to the developing situation. Malik makes another decision. He stands again and walks purposefully toward the rear galley. Tyler isn't there, having moved forward to assist with the beverage cart. Instead, he continues to the front, where Vanessa is serving drinks in premium economy. "Excuse me," he says, standing at the edge of the service area. "The situation is getting worse." There's visible smoke coming from the wall panel now. Vanessa's head snaps up, her eyes flashing with irritation. Several nearby passengers turn to look. "Sir," she says, voice tight, "you need to return to your seat immediately." "We're in the middle of service. I understand, but this is a safety concern. There's actual smoke coming from the wall panel at row 28. "I've already addressed this with you," Vanessa replies, her voice rising slightly. "What you're seeing is probably just condensation from the air conditioning system. It happens on every flight." "No, it's smoke." Malik insists, remaining calm but firm, and the panel is hot to the touch. "Something's wrong." Vanessa sets down her serving tongs with deliberate control. "Sir, I am a trained flight attendant with over 5,000 hours on this aircraft. I think I know the difference between normal operation and an emergency. I'm not questioning your experience. Malik says I'm just reporting what I'm observing. Return to your seat," Vanessa says, her tone leaving no room for discussion. "Now, or I'll have to report you for interfering with cabin crew duties." Tyler, who has been listening to this exchange while serving another row, looks increasingly concerned. He catches Malik's eye briefly, his expression conflicted. A passenger in premium economy, a middle-aged woman in a business suit, frowns. "If he says he sees smoke, shouldn't someone at least check, ma'am?" "I assure you everything is fine," Vanessa says with a tight smile. "This passenger has been disruptive since boarding. We have multiple systems that would alert us to any actual issue." The characterization stings, but Malik keeps his composure. "I'm not trying to be disruptive. I'm trying to report a potential safety concern, which I have acknowledged and assessed," Vanessa says firmly. "Now, this is your final warning. Return to your seat, or there will be consequences when we land." The threat hangs in the air between them. Several passengers are now watching the confrontation, some with concern, others with annoyance at the interrupted service. Malik takes a deep breath, his father's voice echoing in his mind. Leadership sometimes means standing your ground even when everyone wants you to back down. "I'd like to speak to the captain," he says calmly. Vanessa's eyes widen in disbelief. "The captain is flying the aircraft. He's not available for customer complaints about imaginary smoke." "It's not imaginary," Malik insists, "and FAA regulations state that legitimate safety concerns reported by passengers must be investigated." Something in Vanessa's expression shifts. Surprise, perhaps, that this young man in a hoodie knows aviation regulations. But it quickly hardens again. This is not a legitimate safety concern. This is you wanting attention and disrupting our service. Return to your seat now, or I will notify the captain that we have an unruly passenger and there will be authorities waiting when we land. At this moment, Tyler steps forward. "Vanessa, I can just go check really quickly. It would only take a second." Vanessa turns on him, her expression furious. "Stay out of this, Tyler. Finish your service section." Reluctantly, Tyler returns to his duties, shooting an apologetic glance at Malik. Malik, seeing no further option at this moment, returns to his seat. The smell is definitely stronger now, and the wisp of smoke more visible in the dimmed cabin lighting. Mrs. Jackson has awakened and looks at him questioningly. "They won't check," he explains quietly. "They think I'm making it up." "That's ridiculous," she says, peering toward the wall. "I can see something myself now. It's definitely smoke." Martin Cooper finally looks up from his laptop, sniffing the air with a frown. "What is that smell?" "It's like burning plastic." "It's coming from the wall panel," Malik explains. "I've tried to report it twice now, but they won't listen." Cooper's eyes narrow as he notices the faint smoke. "That's not right," he mutters, reaching for his own call button. Within moments, 3 more passengers in nearby rows have also noticed the smell and activated their call buttons. A soft chorus of chimes fills the cabin as the row of illuminated buttons grows. From his seat, Malik can see Vanessa glance at the indicator panel, her expression shifting from irritation to concern as she notes the pattern of calls all coming from the same section of the aircraft. Tyler appears in the aisle, moving quickly toward their row. He kneels, examining the wall panel more carefully this time. "I see it," he confirms, touching the panel gingerly and then pulling his hand back quickly. "And you're right, it's hot. We need to tell the captain," Malik urges. "This could be an electrical fire developing." Tyler nods, all traces of his earlier hesitation gone. "I'll notify him immediately." As Tyler hurries to the interphone to call the cockpit, a businessman from row 22 stands up in the aisle. "Hey, everyone back here smells it too," he announces loudly. "Something's definitely burning." More passengers begin to notice, turning in their seats, murmuring with growing concern. The situation is escalating rapidly from an ignored complaint to a cabin-wide awareness. Vanessa appears at the end of the aisle, her expression now genuinely concerned as she takes in the visible smoke and the multiple passengers confirming the issue. Her eyes meet Malik's briefly, a flash of recognition, and perhaps regret, passing between them. Before she can speak, the captain's voice comes over the PA system. "Folks, this is your captain speaking. We've received reports of an unusual odor and possible smoke in the rear cabin. As a precaution, we're going to divert to Charlotte Douglas International Airport. It's about 20 minutes away. Flight attendants, please prepare for landing." A mixture of relief and anxiety washes over Malik. Relief that the situation is finally being taken seriously. Anxiety about just how serious it might be. He glances at Mrs. Jackson, who reaches over to pat his hand reassuringly. "You did the right thing," she says quietly. "You kept pushing when they wanted you to be quiet." In the galley, Vanessa and Tyler are engaged in urgent conversation, occasionally glancing back toward row 28. The plane banks gently to the left as it changes course, heading for Charlotte. Malik knows this isn't over. The immediate danger may be addressed, but the structural problem, the willingness to dismiss legitimate concerns based on who raises them, remains. And as the plane descends toward an emergency landing, he can't help but wonder how his father will react to all this. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is First Officer Williams speaking. We're beginning our descent into Charlotte. As a precautionary measure, we ask that you review the safety card in the seat pocket in front of you and familiarize yourself with the nearest emergency exits." The cabin has transformed. What was once routine travel anxiety has crystallized into focused fear. Passengers crane their necks to look toward row 28, where the smoke is now unmistakable. A thin gray wisp curling up from behind the panel. Flight attendants move through the cabin with practiced efficiency, checking seatbelts, securing loose items, preparing for what everyone hopes will be an uneventful landing. But the tension is palpable. Vanessa approaches row 28, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by professional concern. She kneels beside Malik's seat, examining the wall panel. Engineering says it could be a short in the in-flight entertainment wiring, she explains, not quite meeting his eye. Nothing critical to aircraft systems. The IFE wiring runs alongside temperature sensors and oxygen controls in this section, Malik replies quietly. If it's shorting out, it could affect other systems. Surprise flickers across Vanessa's face again. "You really do know aviation engineering." "Yes," Malik says simply. "I do." Before she can respond, there's a sharp crackle from behind the panel, and the wisp of smoke thickens momentarily. Vanessa jumps back, eyes wide. "I need a fire extinguisher," she calls to Tyler, who rushes forward with the equipment. A ripple of alarm passes through the cabin. A child starts crying several rows ahead. Mrs. Jackson clutches her armrest, knuckles white, but her expression remains calm. First time for everything, she murmurs. Been flying 60 years and never had an emergency landing. Martin Cooper has abandoned any pretense of work, his laptop stowed, his attention fixed on the increasingly serious situation. As Tyler returns with the fire extinguisher, Malik makes a decision. He stands despite the fastened seatbelt signs being illuminated. "Everyone needs to move away from this section," he says, voice clear and carrying. It's not the voice of the teen in the hoodie who was mocked at the gate. It's the voice of James Reynolds' son, confident, authoritative, and impossible to ignore. If that fire grows, it could spread quickly. Vanessa opens her mouth, perhaps to order him back to his seat, but then stops herself. She looks at the smoke, at the passengers' frightened faces, and then back at Malik. "He's right," she says, making the call. "Everyone in rows 27 through 30, we need you to relocate temporarily to empty seats or the galley areas." Mrs. Jackson struggles slightly as she attempts to stand. Malik offers his arm for support, helping her steadily to her feet. "Such a gentleman," she says with a grateful smile despite the circumstances. "Your mother raised you right. My father, actually," Malik replies, guiding her toward an empty seat several rows forward. As passengers relocate, creating a buffer zone around the affected area, the smoke continues to intensify. Tyler stands ready with the fire extinguisher, but is hesitant to use it on an electrical fire still contained behind a panel. Suddenly, a businessman from row 22, the same one who had confirmed Malik's concerns earlier, stands up. "I smell it all the way up here now," he announces. "That's definitely electrical burning, not coffee or condensation." Murmurs of agreement spread through the cabin as more passengers confirm the smell has spread. The situation is rapidly escalating. The captain's voice returns over the PA cabin crew prepare for arrival in Charlotte. "We've been given priority landing clearance. Estimated touchdown in 7 minutes. Tyler approaches Malik, who is helping settle nervous passengers in their temporary seats. "Thank you for your help," he says quietly. "And for, insisting. If you hadn't." He doesn't finish the sentence, but the implication is clear. If Malik hadn't persisted, the situation could have become much worse before being detected. From the forward cabin, there's a commotion as Richard Bennett, the first-class passenger who had mocked Malik at the gate, appears in the aisle. "What the hell is going on back here?" he demands, ignoring the seatbelt sign. "Why are we landing in Charlotte? I have connections to make." Vanessa attempts to intercept him. "Sir, please return to your seat. We're handling a potential mechanical issue." "Mechanical issue?" Richard scoffs, peering past her to where Tyler stands with the fire extinguisher. His eyes widen as he spots the smoke. "Is that a fire? Are we on fire?" His raised voice sends a fresh wave of anxiety through the cabin. A woman clutches her child closer. An elderly man begins reciting what sounds like a prayer. "Sir, you need to return to your seat now," Vanessa insists more firmly. "Not until someone tells me what's happening," Richard retorts. "I'm a premium customer. I deserve." "You deserve the same safety as everyone else on this aircraft," Malik interrupts, stepping forward. "And right now, safety means returning to your seat and fastening your seatbelt." There's something in Malik's tone, a quiet authority beyond his years, that gives Richard pause. He looks at Malik, really looks at him for the first time, confusion evident on his face. "Do I know you?" he asks. "No," Malik replies. "But you judged me. At the gate." Recognition dawns on Richard's face, followed quickly by embarrassment as he realizes several passengers are watching this exchange. Without another word, he turns and makes his way back to first class. The aircraft begins its final descent, the change in altitude creating a pressure that makes ears pop and exacerbates the tension. The smoke has stopped increasing but hasn't dissipated. Vanessa approaches Malik again. "You should return to a seat as well," she says, her tone professional but no longer dismissive. "I'll help make sure everyone's secure first." Malik replies, nodding toward a young mother struggling with her child's seatbelt while trying to keep both calm. Vanessa hesitates, then nods. "Thank you." As Malik moves through the cabin, helping where needed, offering calm reassurance to frightened passengers, he's aware of a subtle shift. The crew is no longer treating him as a problematic passenger. They're treating him as an ally. The plane touches down in Charlotte with a firm jolt, reverse thrusters roaring as it rapidly decelerates. Through the windows, emergency vehicles are visible on the tarmac. Fire trucks and ambulances, lights flashing in the midday sun. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have landed safely at Charlotte Douglas International," the captain announces. "Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We'll be taxiing to a remote stand where emergency personnel will meet the aircraft to assess the situation." As the plane taxis, the cabin remains tense but orderly. Malik returns to the vicinity of his original seat where Tyler is keeping watch on the affected wall panel. The smoke has thinned but not disappeared. "Maintenance team is waiting," Tyler informs him quietly. "They'll board as soon as we stop." "The wiring configuration in this section is complex," Malik explains. They should check not just the visible issue, but the adjacent systems too. Tyler gives him a curious look. You really do know a lot about these planes. Malik just nods, saying nothing more. His father's instruction echoes in his mind. Don't reveal who you are. Observe. Learn. The aircraft comes to a halt. Through the windows, fire crews can be seen approaching. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's voice returns. We've been instructed to deplane as a precautionary measure. Please leave all belongings behind and proceed to the nearest exit when instructed by your cabin crew. A mix of relief and renewed anxiety washes through the cabin. Emergency evacuations are rare, suggesting the situation may be more serious than it appeared. As the cabin crew prepares the doors, Malik helps Mrs. Jackson gather her essential medications from her purse. I'm not leaving without these, she insists. Everything else can be replaced. Absolutely. Malik agrees, helping her organize the small containers. Martin Cooper, who has been quietly observant throughout the crisis, turns to Malik. You knew exactly what was happening, he says, not a question but an observation. You tried to tell them multiple times. Sometimes people don't listen to those they don't expect to have knowledge. Malik replies simply. Cooper nods slowly. I won't make that mistake again, he says, offering his hand. Thank you. As the doors open and passengers begin to file out onto the evacuation slides, Malik stays behind helping Mrs. Jackson and other passengers who need assistance. He's one of the last to leave the aircraft, ensuring no one is left behind. On the tarmac, emergency crews direct passengers toward waiting buses. The midday North Carolina sun beats down as people gather in groups discussing the experience, making phone calls to loved ones, watching as fire crews board the aircraft they just evacuated. Malik helps Mrs. Jackson onto one of the buses, finding her a comfortable seat before stepping back onto the tarmac. He watches as maintenance personnel and fire officials confer with the flight crew near the aircraft's forward door. And then he sees her. A woman in a SkyLink Airlines operations uniform moving purposefully across the tarmac. Lisa Dawson, Chief of Airport Operations for Charlotte Douglas, recognizable from company events Malik has attended with his father. She's scanning the crowd looking for someone. When she spots the gathering of crew members, she makes her way toward them, tablet in hand. Where is Reynolds? Malik hears her ask as she approaches the group. I need to speak with Reynolds immediately. Vanessa, assuming she means the captain, steps forward. Captain Reynolds is still completing the shutdown checklist with the first officer, ma'am. He should be... Not the captain, Lisa interrupts, still scanning the crowd. Malik Reynolds, James Reynolds' son. He was on this flight. A hush falls over the small group of crew members. Vanessa's face goes pale as the implication of the name sinks in. Reynolds. She repeats, the color draining from her face. As in, SkyLink Reynolds? Yes, Lisa confirms impatiently. Mr. Reynolds is on the line right now. The emergency response team confirms electrical failure exactly where his son reported it nearly 30 minutes ago. In that moment, Vanessa turns slowly, her eyes searching the crowd, until they land on Malik, still standing on the tarmac watching this exchange. Recognition dawns, followed by shock, followed by the dawning horror of understanding. The teen in the hoodie she dismissed, the passenger whose safety concerns she ignored, wasn't just any passenger. He was the son of the man who owned the entire airline. Cabin crew cross-check doors for evacuation. The captain's command rings through the cabin intercom, professional but urgent. Outside the windows, emergency vehicles surround the aircraft, lights flashing in rhythmic patterns against the fuselage. Inside, the calm efficiency of trained professionals takes over. Vanessa and Tyler move through their evacuation procedures with practiced precision, their earlier conflict temporarily set aside in the face of potential danger. Leave everything, Vanessa instructs, her voice carrying clearly through the cabin. When you exit, move quickly away from the aircraft and follow the directions of ground personnel. The smoke from the wall panel has thinned but not disappeared entirely. Maintenance personnel have boarded through the forward door and are examining the affected area. Their expressions grim as they remove the panel to reveal charred wiring beneath. "Sir, we need to evacuate now," Tyler says to Malik, who's helping Mrs. Jackson gather her essential medications. "She needs these." Malik explains. "Heart condition." Tyler hesitates, then nods. "Quickly, please. Take only what's necessary." Throughout the cabin, passengers prepare for evacuation with varying levels of composure. Some are visibly frightened, clutching armrests or each other. Others maintain a stoic calm, following instructions with quiet determination. A few are filming the experience on their phones, despite repeated requests to leave all items behind. Martin Cooper, the businessman from the aisle seat, stands ready to exit, briefcase left behind but phone still clutched in his hand. He catches Malik's eye. "That's going to be one hell of an incident report," he observes dryly. "Someone's head will roll for ignoring warnings about an electrical fire." Malik says nothing, focusing instead on helping Mrs. Jackson secure her medications in her pockets. Front and rear exits, only the captain's voice announces. Mid-cabin exits remain closed. Please proceed calmly to the nearest available exit. As passengers begin to move toward the doors, a maintenance technician confers urgently with the lead flight attendant, pointing to the exposed wiring. Malik, with his engineering knowledge, can see the extent of the damage. A melted mass of plastic and copper where the in-flight entertainment system wiring runs alongside more critical aircraft systems. The first passengers reach the exits where Tyler and another flight attendant guide them onto the inflatable slides. There's no urgency for conventional slides. This isn't a crash landing or an imminent danger situation, but standard procedure dictates using them for any emergency evacuation. "Steps it slide." Tyler instructs each passenger at the rear exit. "Move away from the aircraft once you're on the ground." Near the front of the cabin, Richard Bennett's voice rises above the controlled chaos. "This is outrageous. My luggage contains essential business documents. I demand to retrieve my briefcase before evacuation. Sir, for everyone's safety, we must leave everything behind." Vanessa explains, her professional demeanor firmly back in place. "Do you know who I am?" Richard protests. "I'm a Diamond Elite member. I have rights." "In an emergency evacuation, everyone has exactly the same rights," Vanessa replies firmly. "Please proceed to the exit now." For a moment it seems Richard might continue arguing, but the stern expressions of the flight crew and the anxious faces of fellow passengers waiting to exit finally silence him. With a final huff of indignation, he moves toward the door. Malik and Mrs. Jackson make their way slowly toward the rear exit, letting others pass. Despite the situation, Mrs. Jackson maintains remarkable composure. "Not quite how I expected to spend my afternoon," she comments with a wry smile. "But I've lived long enough to know that any landing you can walk away from is a good one." "My father says the same thing," Malik replies, offering his arm for support as they navigate the aisle. As they near the exit, Malik notices Tyler giving him thoughtful looks between assisting other passengers. The young flight attendant's expression suggests he's processing earlier events in a new light, perhaps wondering about the teen who knew so much about aircraft systems. From the cockpit, the captain emerges to oversee the evacuation, his experienced eyes scanning the cabin systematically. He pauses momentarily when he reaches Malik and Mrs. Jackson. "Everyone accounted for in the rear section?" he asks. "Yes, sir," Malik confirms. "We're the last from rows 25 to 30. The captain nods, then does a double take, studying Malik more closely. There's a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Perhaps he's seen Malik at company events, or maybe he just notices the confident authority that seems at odds with the teen's casual appearance. "Good work back there," the captain says simply before moving on to check other sections. At the rear exit, they finally reach Tyler, who's helping passengers onto the slide. "Ma'am, I'll need to help you," he says to Mrs. Jackson. Just sit at the edge, and I'll make sure you go down safely." "I was sliding down riverbanks before you were born, young man," Mrs. Jackson replies good-naturedly. "But I appreciate the help." As Tyler assists Mrs. Jackson, he turns to Malik. "Thank you," he says quietly, "for insisting, for helping." "Just doing what anyone should do," Malik replies. But they don't. Tyler says, a hint of bitterness in his tone. Most people just accept what they're told, even when they know something's wrong. Before Malik can respond, Mrs. Jackson is safely on her way down the slide, and it's his turn to evacuate. With a final nod to Tyler, he sits at the edge of the door and pushes off, sliding down to the inflated surface below. On the tarmac, emergency personnel direct passengers toward waiting buses. The midday sun beats down, creating a surreal atmosphere as people in business attire and vacation clothes gather in groups on the concrete apron aircraft evacuation slides, not typically part of their travel plans. Fire trucks stand ready, though there are no visible flames. Paramedics check passengers showing signs of distress or anxiety. Airport operations personnel coordinate with airline staff their reflective vests and badges, identifying their various roles. Malik helps Mrs. Jackson onto one of the buses, finding her a seat before stepping back onto the tarmac. He watches as maintenance personnel and airline officials confer near the aircraft, examining tablets and pointing to the section of fuselage where the incident occurred. His phone vibrates in his pocket. A text from his father. "Are you safe? Call immediately." Before he can respond, Lisa Dawson appears, moving purposefully across the tarmac toward the gathered crew members. As Chief of Airport Operations for Charlotte Douglas, she's responsible for coordinating the emergency response. Malik watches as she approaches the group, her expression intense as she scans the crowd. "Where is Reynolds?" he hears her ask. "I need to speak with Reynolds immediately." The moment has arrived. The observation phase of his journey is about to give way to something else entirely. The evacuation proceeds with controlled urgency. Fire crews stand by as passengers descend the inflatable slides, some with grace, others awkwardly, but all moving steadily away from the aircraft as directed by ground personnel. Emergency response vehicles form a perimeter around the plane, their lights flashing against the aluminum fuselage. Ambulances wait nearby, paramedics ready to assist anyone affected by smoke inhalation or evacuation injuries. On the tarmac, Malik helps Mrs. Jackson find shade as they wait for transportation to the terminal. Despite the circumstances, she maintains remarkable composure. "In 60 years of flying, this is my first evacuation," she tells him, adjusting her purse strap. "Never thought I'd be going down a slide at my age." "You handled it like a pro," Malik assures her with a smile. "And you," she says, patting his arm, "you were magnificent, standing up when everyone wanted you to sit down and be quiet. Reminds me of my late husband. He never could abide foolishness, especially when safety was concerned." Across the tarmac, Malik observes the flight crew assembled near the nose of the aircraft. Captain Reynolds, no relation, confers with ground personnel, while Vanessa stands slightly apart, her professional demeanor intact, but her expression troubled as she glances occasionally toward the passengers gathered on the apron. Tyler moves among the evacuees, checking on their well-being, offering water to those affected by the heat. His dedication stands in sharp contrast to the dismissive attitude Malik encountered earlier in the flight. Airport buses begin arriving to transport passengers to the terminal. Priority is given to elderly passengers and families with young children. Mrs. Jackson is among the first group to board. "You coming, young man?" she asks Malik as she settles into her seat. "I'll catch the next one," he replies. "Want to make sure everyone gets on okay?" She studies him for a moment, then nods knowingly. "You're more than you appear to be, aren't you? Well, whatever happens next, remember, this old woman is grateful to you." As her bus departs, Malik turns his attention back to the aircraft. Maintenance personnel have removed multiple wall panels, exposing the complex wiring systems beneath. Even from a distance, he can see the charred sections where the fire began, precisely where he had reported the burning smell. His phone buzzes again. Another text from his father, Charlotte Ops, confirms electrical fire. Exactly where you reported. Call me. Before he can respond, his attention is drawn to a commotion near the crew gathering. Lisa Dawson has arrived, tablet in hand, moving with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to emergency management. "Where is Reynolds?" she asks, her voice carrying across the tarmac. "I need to speak with Reynolds immediately." Vanessa steps forward, assuming she means the captain. "Captain Reynolds is completing the shutdown procedures with the first officer, ma'am. He should be—" "Not the captain," Lisa interrupts, still scanning the crowd. "Malik Reynolds, James Reynolds' son. He was on this flight." The effect of her words is immediate and electric. The assembled crew members fall silent, expressions shifting from confusion to shock as the implication registers. Vanessa's face goes pale, her composed facade cracking for the first time. "Reynolds," she repeats. "As in SkyLink. Reynolds." "Yes," Lisa confirms impatiently. "Mr. Reynolds is on the line right now. The emergency response team confirms electrical failure exactly where his son reported it nearly 30 minutes ago." In that moment, Vanessa turns slowly, her eyes searching the crowd until they land on Malik, still standing on the tarmac watching this exchange. Their eyes meet across the distance. Recognition dawns, followed by shock, followed by the dawning horror of understanding. The teen in the hoodie she dismissed, the passenger whose safety concerns she ignored, wasn't just any passenger. He was the son of the man who owned the entire airline. Tyler follows her gaze, his own expression shifting from confusion to understanding as he connects the dots. The knowledge of aircraft systems, the quiet confidence, the certainty that something was wrong. Lisa spots Malik and strides toward him, phone extended. "Mr. Reynolds, your father is on the line. He's been trying to reach you." Malik takes the phone, aware that every crew member is watching this interaction. "Dad, I'm fine. Everyone's safe." James Reynolds' deep voice comes through clearly. "Malik, thank God. The emergency response team just briefed me. They're saying we narrowly avoided a major incident. The fire was spreading toward the oxygen line. I tried to report it," Malik says simply, "multiple times." So I hear his father replies, his tone grim. "We'll discuss that in detail later. For now, Lisa will get you to the terminal. I'm sending the corporate jet to bring you home. What about the other passengers? We're arranging alternative transportation for everyone. Full compensation packages are being prepared. But I need you home. This has become more than an observation exercise." "Understood?" Malik says. "I'll see you soon." As he hands the phone back to Lisa, he becomes acutely aware of the shifted dynamic around him. The crew members who had dismissed him hours earlier now regard him with a mixture of apprehension and dawning respect. "Mr. Reynolds, if you'll follow me," Lisa says, gesturing toward a waiting SUV. "We have a private lounge prepared while we arrange your transportation." "Thank you," Malik replies, "but I'd prefer to stay with the other passengers for now. Mrs. Jackson, the elderly woman I was helping, I want to make sure she's settled." Lisa hesitates, then nods. "Of course. We can check on her at the terminal." As they prepare to leave, Captain Reynolds approaches, having been informed of the situation. "Mr. Reynolds," he says, extending his hand. "I wasn't aware you were on board. Your father speaks highly of your interest in aviation." "Thank you," Captain Malik replies, shaking his hand. "Your crew handled the emergency landing professionally." The captain nods, but his expression suggests he's already aware of the earlier issues. "I understand there were some challenges before the diversion decision was made." "We can discuss that later," Malik says diplomatically. "Right now, the priority is the passengers." As Malik walks with Lisa toward the waiting vehicle, he passes Vanessa, who stands rigid, her professional composure barely masking her distress. "Mr. Reynolds," she begins, her voice strained. "I want to apologize for—" "Not now," Malik interrupts quietly. "There will be time for that conversation later." Tyler steps forward as well, his expression earnest. "Sir, I just want to say, you tried to help," Malik acknowledges with a nod. "I noticed." As Malik climbs into the SUV, he glances back at the aircraft, the vessel that was supposed to be an observation exercise but became something far more significant. The smoke has cleared, but the implications of what transpired linger in the air like an invisible cloud. Inside the vehicle, Lisa begins briefing him on the arrangements being made, but Malik's mind is already racing ahead. His father had sent him to observe the airline's operations from a passenger's perspective. What he discovered was more fundamental than service issues or comfort concerns. He discovered a culture where appearance dictated credibility, where certain voices were heard and others silenced, where safety itself could be compromised by assumptions based on a hoodie and a seat assignment. And as the SUV pulls away from the tarmac, one thought crystallizes in his mind. This is about to change everything. The young man you've been dismissing all day isn't just any passenger. He's the son of James Reynolds, the owner of this entire airline. Lisa Dawson's words hang in the air, their impact rippling through the group of crew members like a shockwave. Vanessa's face drains of color. Tyler's eyes widen in understanding. The ground operations team exchanges glances, suddenly alert to the higher stakes of this incident. Richard Bennett, who had been complaining loudly about his disrupted travel plans, falls silent mid-sentence. He turns slowly, eyes searching the crowd until they land on Malik, the same teen he had mockingly laughed at in the terminal. Recognition dawns, followed by the uncomfortable realization that his behavior was witnessed not by some random kid, but by the son of SkyLink's founder and CEO. As Malik walks with Lisa toward the waiting SUV, the tarmac seems to part before them. Crew members straighten their uniforms. Ground staff snap to attention. The shift in atmosphere is palpable. Respect, deference, and more than a little apprehension now radiating toward the young man in the hoodie who had been so easily dismissed hours earlier. Mr. Reynolds' Vanessa calls, hurrying to intercept him before he reaches the vehicle. Her composure is cracking, professional mask slipping to reveal genuine distress beneath. "I need to explain safety isn't a premium service." Malik interrupts, his voice calm, but carrying clearly across the tarmac. "It's the baseline. It doesn't matter who raises a concern. Every passenger deserves to be heard when safety is at stake." His words aren't delivered with anger or vindictiveness. There's no satisfaction in his tone, no gotcha moment. Instead, there's a steadiness that belies his 17 years, the quiet authority of someone raised to understand responsibility rather than privilege. Vanessa flinches slightly, recognizing her own failures reflected back at her. "I made assumptions," she admits, voice barely above a whisper. "Terrible assumptions." "Yes," Malik agrees simply. "You did." Before she can respond further, Tyler steps forward. Unlike Vanessa, his approach isn't defensive. There's sincerity in his expression as he addresses Malik. "I should have checked sooner," he says. "I knew something wasn't right, but I deferred to seniority instead of following protocol." Malik nods, acknowledging the admission. "Hierarchy matters in aviation," he concedes. "But safety protocols exist precisely because they transcend hierarchy." As this exchange unfolds, passengers who have not yet been transported to the terminal begin to piece together what's happening. Whispers spread through the crowd. "That's the CEO's son. He tried to warn them about the fire. They wouldn't listen because of how he looked." Mrs. Jackson, who has delayed boarding her bus to witness this revelation, approaches slowly. She reaches for Malik's hand, patting it affectionately. "I knew there was something special about you," she says, smiling warmly. "The way you carried yourself, how you knew exactly what was happening with that electrical problem." You reminded me of my grandson, always seeing things others miss. From the gathered crowd of passengers, others begin stepping forward with their own accounts. I heard him try to report it 3 separate times, a middle-aged woman confirms. The flight attendant just dismissed him each time. When he went to the galley to report it directly, I heard them threaten to have him met by security when we landed, adds a man in a business suit. Martin Cooper, who had been seated beside Malik, steps forward as well. If he hadn't persisted, who knows how much worse this could have been. That fire was spreading toward the oxygen lines. A maintenance technician nearby nods grimly, confirming the assessment. Initial examination shows the fire had compromised secondary insulation. Another 15 minutes and we would have had a serious situation. Captain Reynolds, who has joined the growing circle, looks disturbed by this information. This will require a full investigation, he says firmly. All safety protocols will be reviewed. Lisa Dawson, checking her tablet, interjects. Mr. Reynolds, Sr. is already initiating a comprehensive review of safety reporting procedures across the entire airline. Richard Bennett, sensing the shifting dynamics and perhaps hoping to salvage his own reputation, approaches hesitantly. Mr. Reynolds, he begins his earlier condescension, replaced by forced cordiality. I want to apologize for any misunderstanding at the gate. Had I known who you were. That's exactly the problem. Malik interrupts, his voice still calm but now carrying an edge. It shouldn't matter who I am. Every passenger deserves respect. Every safety concern merits investigation. My name doesn't make my observation more valid than anyone else's. A ripple of approval passes through the gathered passengers. Several nod in agreement. My firm has been a loyal corporate customer of SkyLink for years. Richard continues undeterred. I'm sure we can move past this unfortunate incident. Your firm will be receiving a formal communication regarding today's events, Lisa interjects smoothly. Mr. Reynolds Sr. has specifically requested the account information for all corporate clients whose representatives were on this flight. The implications of this statement are not lost on Richard, whose face reddens slightly as he steps back without further comment. As the final buses arrive to transport the remaining passengers, Malik turns to address those still gathered on the tarmac. There's no grandstanding in his demeanor, no power play, just a 17-year-old who suddenly finds himself at the center of a transformative moment. I want to thank everyone who supported me when I tried to report the issue, he says. And I want to assure all of you that SkyLink takes this incident extremely seriously. My father built this airline with safety as the absolute priority, and what happened today, the way legitimate concerns were dismissed, doesn't reflect the culture he's worked to create. He turns to Lisa. I'd like to make sure every passenger receives not just compensation for the disruption, but a personal acknowledgement of what went wrong today. Already in progress, Lisa confirms. Your father has authorized full rebooting on partner airlines' hotel accommodations, as needed meal vouchers and compensation packages. As the final passengers board the waiting buses, Malik finds himself standing with the flight crew maintenance personnel and airport operations team. The dynamic has shifted dramatically from hours earlier, when he was just another teen in a hoodie being told to sit down and be quiet. What happens now? Tyler asks, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Now Malik replies, we learn from this. We fix what's broken, not just the wiring, but the thinking that allowed this to happen. As he walks toward the waiting SUV, Malik's phone buzzes with a text from his father. Proud of how you handled yourself. This wasn't what I had in mind for your observation exercise, but you've uncovered something far more important than service issues. We have work to do. Malik smiles slightly as he types his reply. Lesson learned, Dad. Leadership isn't about where you sit. It's about making sure everyone has a voice. In the terminal building, as SkyLink staff scramble to rebook passengers and manage the fallout from the emergency landing, the story is already spreading. Not just of an electrical fire and diverted aircraft. Those are uncommon but not unprecedented. But of a CEO's son traveling incognito in economy, whose safety warnings were repeatedly ignored because of assumptions based on appearance. It's the kind of story that changes companies, the kind that reshapes cultures, the kind that reminds everyone that sometimes the most important voices are the ones we're least inclined to hear. 48 hours after SkyLink Flight 347's emergency landing, the glass-walled conference room on the 32nd floor of SkyLink's Atlanta headquarters is filled to capacity. Executives, safety officers, HR directors, and legal counsel sit in tense silence as Carla Winters, the airline's head of operations, conducts the most significant incident review in the company's history. Let's be absolutely clear about what happened. Carla begins, her voice steady but grave. At 58, with salt and pepper hair cropped short and 3 decades of aviation experience, she commands the room with quiet authority. This wasn't just a service failure, it was a breakdown in our safety culture. On the massive screen behind her, a timeline displays the sequence of events from Malik's first report of the burning smell to the eventual emergency landing. Key moments are highlighted in red. The 3 separate occasions when his concerns were dismissed. The log showing his call button canceled without response, the crucial minutes lost before action was finally taken. The maintenance report confirms it. She continues advancing to technical images of the damaged wiring. The fire originated exactly where Mr. Reynolds reported it. Thermal imaging shows it had begun spreading toward adjacent systems, including the oxygen supply line. Had this continued undetected for another 15 to 20 minutes, we could have faced a catastrophic situation. The room remains silent, the gravity of the near miss hanging heavy in the air. What's most disturbing, Carla says, clicking to the next slide, is this. The screen fills with 4 separate video feeds from the aircraft's security cameras. One shows Malik approaching Vanessa to report the smell. Another captures her dismissive response. A third shows Tyler's hesitation when asked to investigate. The fourth reveals Vanessa actively canceling multiple call buttons from the affected section without checking the issue. Our own surveillance confirms exactly what Mr. Reynolds reported, Carla states. His concerns were repeatedly dismissed. Protocol was violated. And the reason seems distressingly clear. She clicks to the next slide. A split-screen comparison showing how differently Vanessa interacted with first-class passengers versus Malik. The contrast is stark and undeniable. We have a culture problem, Carla concludes. One that not only compromises our commitment to customer experience, but actively undermines our safety standards. From the back of the room, a voice speaks. Deep, measured, authoritative. James Reynolds has been observing silently until now. "This isn't about my son," he says, rising from his seat. All heads turn toward the founder and CEO of SkyLink Airlines. At 54, James carries himself with the quiet confidence of someone who has built something substantial from nothing. His charcoal suit is impeccable, but his expression is troubled. This is about what happens when we allow assumptions to override protocols, when we judge passengers by appearance, rather than treating everyone with equal dignity, when we create a culture where certain voices matter more than others. He moves to the front of the room, standing beside Carla. On the screen behind them, the video continues to play silently, Malik being dismissed again and again. "I built this airline with one core principle," James continues. "Safety is non-negotiable. It doesn't matter if you're in seat 1A or 30F. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a suit or a hoodie. It doesn't matter if you're 17 or 70. When safety is concerned, every voice deserves to be heard." He turns to face the assembled leadership team directly. What happened on Flight 347 wasn't a random incident. It was the predictable outcome of a culture that has drifted from our founding values. And it stops now. The following hour is devoted to detailed analysis. The flight data recorder confirms the electrical malfunction began approximately 45 minutes before Malik first reported it, subtle enough that automated systems didn't trigger alarms, but detectable to someone sitting nearby. Passenger testimonies are reviewed with multiple accounts confirming Malik's repeated attempts to alert the crew. Mrs. Jackson's statement is particularly damning. That young man tried 3 times to report what he smelled, and 3 times he was treated like he was making things up. If he hadn't been so persistent, I might not be here giving this statement. Technical reports confirm the fire had begun melting through secondary insulation and was approaching critical aircraft systems. The chief engineer's assessment is blunt. Another 20 minutes, and we would have had a major incident. The call button logs reveal a pattern beyond Flight 347. Data showing economy cabin requests consistently waited longer for response than those from premium cabins. In some cases, call buttons from economy were canceled without any crew member ever reaching the passenger. As the evidence mounts, James Reynolds' expression grows increasingly grave. This isn't just about one flight or one crew. It's about patterns that have developed throughout the organization, patterns that contradict everything he built the airline to represent. I want every person in this room to understand something he says as the presentation concludes. What happened on Flight 347 will never happen again at SkyLink. Not because my son was involved, but because it revealed a fundamental flaw in our culture. And culture starts at the top. He turns to Carla. I want a complete overhaul of our training, our procedures, our incentive structures, everything that shapes how our staff interact with passengers. Safety concerns are to be treated equally, regardless of who raises them or where they're sitting. Customer respect isn't a premium perk. It's the baseline for everyone. The room is silent as the implications sink in. This isn't a cosmetic fix or a PR exercise. This is a fundamental restructuring of how the airline operates. Now James continues. Let's discuss the immediate consequences. The next phase of the meeting focuses on the individuals directly involved. Karen Walsh, the gate agent who mocked Malik, has been placed on administrative leave pending a full review. Vanessa Taylor, the flight attendant who repeatedly dismissed safety concerns, faces potential termination and review of her certification by regulatory authorities. Tyler Jenkins, the junior flight attendant who eventually responded to Malik's concerns but initially deferred to Vanessa, is in a more complex position, having failed to follow protocol initially but ultimately taking appropriate action. Mr. Jenkins represents a teaching opportunity, James observes. His initial failure was cultural, deferring to seniority over safety protocol, but he eventually did the right thing. I want to speak with him personally. Then there's Richard Bennett, the first-class passenger who joined in mocking Malik at the gate and later demanded special treatment during the emergency evacuation. Mr. Bennett's employer, Westridge Financial, is one of our largest corporate clients. Notes the head of sales looking uncomfortable. They book over $3 million in annual travel with us, was James corrects quietly. They were one of our largest corporate clients. As of this morning, I've personally informed their CEO that we'll be terminating our corporate agreement. A company is known by the behavior it tolerates, and we will not tolerate what Mr. Bennett displayed. The sales director pales, but nods in agreement. As the meeting begins to wrap up, James introduces one more element. There's someone else who should be part of this conversation, he says, moving toward the door. He opens it and Malik enters the conference room. No longer in his travel hoodie and jeans, Malik is dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt. But his demeanor remains the same, observant, composed, thoughtful beyond his years. Malik's experience revealed gaps in our organization that data alone couldn't show us. James explains. He's prepared a preliminary report based on his observations, not just from Flight 347, but from the entire journey. I want everyone to listen carefully to what he has to say. As Malik steps forward, the room falls silent. The executives and directors, who just hours ago were reviewing videos of him being dismissed, now wait attentively for his assessment. The shift is striking, a vivid illustration of how perception changes when identity is revealed. Malik notices this irony but doesn't comment on it. Instead, he focuses on what matters most, ensuring this never happens again to any passenger regardless of who they are or aren't. "Thank you for the opportunity to share my observations," he begins. "What I experienced wasn't just about poor service or ignored warnings. It was about a fundamental disconnect between SkyLink's stated values and the actual passenger experience." His clear, insightful analysis sets the stage for what will become the most significant transformation in SkyLink's history, one that will eventually become a model for the entire industry. The conference room on the 32nd floor has emptied except for 3 people: James Reynolds, Carla Winters, and Karen Walsh. The gate agent sits stiffly in her chair, hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the polished table surface, rather than meeting the gaze of SkyLink's founder. On the screen behind them, security footage from Gate C-45 plays on loop. Karen laughing openly at Malik sharing a conspiratorial look with Richard Bennett, dismissing the teen with a condescending wave. The audio is clear. "We'll make sure the plane doesn't leave without you." Ms. Walsh. James begins his tone measured but firm. "Would you care to explain what I'm seeing here?" Karen shifts uncomfortably. "Mr. Reynolds, I had no idea who he was. If I had known—" "That's precisely the problem," James interrupts. "Your treatment of my son was unacceptable not because he's my son, but because that's how you treated a passenger. Any passenger." "I've been with SkyLink for 12 years, Karen says, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. "I've handled thousands of flights, dealt with every kind of passenger situation imaginable. And is this how you typically handle young passengers? Particularly young black passengers?" Carla asks, gesturing toward the screen. Karen's silence is answer enough. "We've reviewed your passenger interaction record." Carla continues, consulting her tablet. "Over the past year, you've received 8 formal complaints about dismissive or disrespectful treatment. 6 of those complaints came from minority passengers. Airport gates are high-stress environments," Karen protests. "Passengers get upset when flights are delayed or when they don't understand boarding procedures." Ms. Walsh James says quietly, "I started as a baggage handler. I've worked every position in this airline. I know exactly how stressful gates can be. That doesn't excuse treating any passenger as less worthy of respect than others." He leans forward, his expression grave, but not unkind. "What troubles me most isn't that you didn't recognize my son. It's that you seem to think his appearance, his hoodie, his youth, his race, made him less deserving of basic courtesy than other passengers." Karen's eyes remain downcast, her posture rigid. "I believe in second chances," James continues. "I believe people can learn and grow. But I also believe in accountability." He nods to Carla, who slides a document across the table. "You're being reassigned to our customer service retraining program," Carla explains. "For the next 3 months, you'll be working directly with our new passenger advocacy team, learning to recognize and address unconscious bias in customer interactions." Karen looks up, surprise evident in her expression. "I'm not being terminated." "Not at this time," James confirms. "But your continued employment will depend entirely on your demonstrated commitment to treating every passenger with equal respect regardless of appearance, ticket class, or any other factor." As Karen signs the document, a subtle shift occurs in her demeanor, the defensive posture giving way to a more thoughtful consideration of the opportunity she's being given. "Thank you," she says quietly as she rises to leave. "I understand." After she exits, James turns to Carla. Next. The pattern repeats throughout the day. Richard Bennett's corporate supervisor is invited to review the footage of his behavior both at the gate and during the emergency evacuation. The revelation that his actions cost Westridge Financial its corporate account with SkyLink, a relationship worth millions annually, results in his demotion from senior analyst to desk consultant. Your employee publicly mocked a teenager based on his appearance, then attempted to disrupt an emergency evacuation by demanding special treatment as a premium customer, James explains to the mortified supervisor. That behavior reflects directly on your company's values. Vanessa Taylor's case is more complex given the safety implications. Her disciplinary hearing includes representatives from the FAA who review the flight recorder data and video evidence showing her repeated dismissal of legitimate safety concerns. "I've been flying that route for 8 years," she explains, her professional composure cracking under the weight of evidence against her. "We get passengers complaining about smells all the time. Usually it's nothing. But protocol requires you to investigate every reported concern the FAA representative reminds her, especially when it pertains to potential fire hazards." "I made a judgment call," Vanessa insists, "based on my experience. Based on appearances." Carla interrupts, displaying the footage of Vanessa's differential treatment of passengers throughout the flight. "You responded promptly to similar requests from first-class passengers, but repeatedly dismissed or ignored those from economy. The evidence is irrefutable. Vanessa's certification is suspended pending further review with the FAA representative, noting that failure to investigate reported safety concerns constitutes a serious breach of duty." Tyler Jenkins, the younger flight attendant who eventually supported Malik's concerns, meets with James in a smaller conference room. Unlike the others, his meeting feels less like a disciplinary action and more like a mentoring session. "You were caught between protocol and hierarchy," James observes. "You knew something wasn't right, but you deferred to your senior colleague." Tyler nods, relieved by the understanding, but still visibly troubled. "I should have checked sooner. I knew procedure required investigation of any reported smell, but Vanessa was so dismissive. I hesitated. That hesitation could have had serious consequences," James acknowledges. "But ultimately, you did act. You verified the issue when given the opportunity and supported the proper safety procedures once the situation was confirmed." "What happens now?" Tyler asks, uncertainty written across his face. "That depends on you," James replies. "We're implementing comprehensive changes in our training and reporting structures. We need people who understand both the letter and the spirit of safety protocols, people who will put passenger safety above hierarchical concerns." A flicker of hope appears in Tyler's expression. "I want to be part of that change. I never want to be in a position again where I know something's wrong, but don't act immediately." James nods thoughtfully. "Then I have a proposal for you. Elena Rodriguez, the gate agent who witnessed Karen's treatment of Malik, but remained silent, faces her own reckoning. Unlike Karen, her issue wasn't active discrimination but passive complicity." "You saw what was happening," Carla points out gently. "You knew it wasn't right. But you said nothing. Karen has been at the gate longer than me." Elena explains, her voice soft with regret. "I've seen what happens to agents who question her decisions. They get the worst shifts, the most difficult assignments. So you stayed silent to protect yourself," Carla concludes. Elena nods, unable to meet Carla's gaze. "That silence has consequences too," Carla explains. "It enables a culture where this kind of behavior becomes normalized. As these individual reckonings unfold, a parallel process is taking place throughout SkyLink. Safety procedures are being reviewed and reinforced. Customer service protocols are being redesigned. Training programs are being completely overhauled. And at the center of it all is Malik working alongside his father to ensure the changes address the root causes of what he experienced. His engineering mindset proves invaluable, approaching organizational culture as a system with inputs, processes, and outputs that can be analyzed and optimized. It's not enough to punish individuals, he explains during a strategy session with the executive team. We need to redesign the systems that allowed these behaviors to develop and persist. As the day draws to a close, James and Malik find themselves alone in James's office, looking out over the Atlanta skyline as the setting sun casts long shadows across the city. "Not exactly what I had in mind when I sent you on that flight," James admits, a hint of weariness in his voice. "No," Malik agrees, but may be what needed to happen. James studies his son's profile, pride mingling with concern. I never wanted you to experience that kind of dismissal, that kind of devaluing. I know, Dad, Malik says quietly, but it happens every day to people who don't have our name or our resources. At least in this case, something good can come from it. James nods slowly, the truth of his son's words sinking in. This isn't just about fixing SkyLink, is it? Malik turns to face his father fully. It's about setting a standard, showing what's possible when a company truly commits to treating every person with dignity regardless of appearance or ticket class. As night falls over Atlanta, father and son continue their discussion, mapping out a vision for transformation that will eventually extend far beyond one airline or one industry. A vision sparked by a teenager in a hoodie whose warnings went unheeded until it was almost too late. 3 months after Flight 347's emergency landing, SkyLink's largest training facility in Atlanta buzzes with activity. The cavernous space that once hosted standard aviation safety drills has been transformed into the headquarters of the most ambitious corporate culture initiative in the airline's history. Welcome to the first day of the Reynolds Standard Program, Carla Winters announces to the assembled group of trainers, executives, and new hires. What you're about to undertake isn't just a training course. It's a complete reimagining of how an airline should operate. On the walls, large banners display the program's core principles. Every voice matters. Safety has no hierarchy. Dignity is not a premium service question. Assumptions follow protocols. At the front of the room, Tyler Jenkins stands alongside the training directors, his SkyLink uniform now bearing the insignia of a training specialist rather than a flight attendant. His promotion came as a surprise to many, but makes perfect sense to those who understand the new direction. Tyler represents exactly the transformation we're seeking, Carla explains to the group. Someone who learned firsthand the cost of deferring to hierarchy over safety, who is committed to ensuring it never happens again, and who can speak authentically about the importance of following protocols, regardless of who raises a concern. Tyler steps forward, his earlier hesitancy replaced by quiet confidence. 3 months ago, I failed to act promptly when a passenger reported a potential safety issue. That failure nearly resulted in catastrophe. Today, I'm here to help ensure none of you ever make the same mistake. As he speaks, Elena Rodriguez enters the room, her gate agent uniform replaced by business casual attire that reflects her new role as passenger advocacy coordinator. Her responsibility ensuring that passenger concerns are properly documented, tracked, and addressed with special attention to patterns that might indicate bias or inconsistent treatment. Elena will be working directly with our customer experience team to create new channels for passenger feedback. Carla continues. She'll be implementing a system that evaluates not just what we do, but how consistently we do it across all passenger demographics. The comprehensive nature of the Reynolds Standard becomes clear as the day unfolds. It isn't merely about preventing another incident like Flight 347. It's about fundamentally reshaping how SkyLink conceptualizes its relationship with passengers. New protocols mandate that all passenger safety concerns must be investigated immediately, regardless of source. The reporting system has been redesigned to eliminate the possibility of call buttons being canceled without response. Flight attendants now document every passenger interaction involving safety or comfort issues, creating accountability and traceability. But perhaps most significantly, the training itself has evolved. Role-playing scenarios now deliberately challenge staff to recognize and overcome unconscious biases. Trainers present situations where passengers who don't match conventional expectations report legitimate issues. A teenager identifying a mechanical problem, an elderly passenger noticing a security concern, a non-English speaker detecting a safety hazard. We're teaching people to listen to the message, not judge the messenger, Tyler explains as he guides a group through an exercise. Your first response should never be, "Why is this person wrong?" but rather, "What if this person is right?" In the afternoon, the focus shifts to the anonymous reporting system, a new digital platform allowing staff to flag problematic behaviors without fear of retaliation. Karen Walsh, now part of the customer service retraining team, demonstrates the system with a surprising degree of engagement. This tool would have allowed someone to report my behavior at the gate, she acknowledges openly, and it might have prompted me to recognize patterns in how I was treating certain passengers before it escalated to the point it did. Her candor is striking, evidence of the genuine transformation occurring within the organization. What began as disciplinary action has evolved into a commitment to improvement, with former offenders becoming some of the most dedicated advocates for change. The industry implications become clear when representatives from the FAA arrive to observe the training. What started as an internal SkyLink initiative is drawing attention from regulatory authorities who see potential applications across commercial aviation. What you're developing here goes beyond customer service, the FAA representative notes during a feedback session. It's addressing a blind spot in safety culture that exists throughout the industry. We're very interested in how these protocols could be standardized across carriers. As the training day concludes, James Reynolds makes an appearance walking through the facility, observing exercises, engaging with staff. He moves without fanfare, listening more than speaking, occasionally asking questions that probe beneath surface understanding to ensure the changes are taking root. When he reaches the simulation area, he pauses to watch a scenario in progress, a role play where a passenger in economy reports an unusual noise from the landing gear. The flight attendant in training responds with immediate attention following the new protocol of acknowledging, investigating, and documenting, treating the report with the same seriousness regardless of where in the aircraft it originated. James nods approvingly as the scenario concludes successfully, then moves to the next station. His presence reinforces the message that this initiative comes directly from the top, that the Reynolds Standard isn't just a program, but a commitment from the founder himself. As evening approaches and the training sessions wrap up, Tyler finds himself in conversation with Elena, both reflecting on how much has changed in 3 months. "I never thought I'd be doing this," Tyler admits. "When I started as a flight attendant, I just wanted to travel and have a stable job. Now I feel like I'm part of something much bigger." Same, Elena agrees. "I used to think keeping my head down was the safe option. Now I understand that silence isn't actually neutral. It's a choice that allows problems to grow." Their discussion is interrupted by the arrival of Malik, who has been working with the engineering team to develop new systems for detecting and reporting technical issues. At 17, he's younger than most SkyLink employees, yet he moves through the facility with natural confidence, respected not for his last name, but for the clarity of his insights. "How's it going?" he asks, joining their conversation. "Better than I expected," Tyler replies, honestly. People are genuinely engaged, not just going through the motions. The case studies help, Elena adds, especially the ones with actual footage from Flight 347. Seeing the real consequences makes it impossible to dismiss as just corporate policy. Malik nods thoughtfully. "That was important to me, making sure this wasn't abstract. Real people were at risk because assumptions overrode protocols." As they talk, James approaches, having completed his tour of the facility. "Looks like the first day was a success," he observes. "Yes, sir," Tyler confirms. The response has been overwhelming positive. People understand this isn't just about one incident. It's about building a better airline. "A safer airline," James corrects gently. The rest follows from there. As they leave the training center, the sun setting over Atlanta's skyline, the scale of what they're undertaking comes into focus. This isn't just an internal policy change or a PR exercise. It's a fundamental reimagining of how an airline should function, one that places equal value on every passenger voice, that treats safety as truly non-negotiable, regardless of who raises concerns, and that recognizes dignity as a baseline rather than a premium service. And as news of the Reynolds Standard begins to spread throughout the industry, other airlines take notice. What started as one company's response to a near disaster is evolving into a movement that may eventually transform air travel for everyone. All because a teenager in a hoodie refused to be silenced when he saw something wrong. 6 months after the incident on Flight 347, a group of 20 new flight attendants sits in SkyLink's state-of-the-art training facility in Atlanta. The room buzzes with nervous energy as the trainees prepare for their final certification session before beginning active duty. Tyler Jenkins stands at the front of the room, no longer the hesitant junior crew member, but now a confident training specialist. At 23, he's younger than many of the instructors, but his experience gives him a unique perspective that has proven invaluable to the Reynolds Standard program. Today's session is different from your technical training. He begins making eye contact with each trainee. We're not going to discuss emergency exits or beverage service. We're going to talk about something more fundamental: how the culture of an airline can either reinforce or undermine all the safety protocols you've learned. The screen behind him illuminates with the SkyLink logo, followed by the words, Case Study Flight 347, When Assumptions Override Safety. What you're about to see is real footage from an actual SkyLink flight 6 months ago. Tyler continues. It's not easy to watch, especially knowing what was at stake. But it's essential that every person who wears this uniform understands what happens when we allow bias, conscious or unconscious, to influence how seriously we take passenger concerns. The screen splits into 4 quadrants, showing synchronized security camera footage from different areas of the aircraft. The quality is excellent, capturing not just actions, but facial expressions and body language. Pay particular attention to the interactions between crew members and the passenger. In seat 28B, Tyler instructs. Note how the same safety concern is handled differently depending on who raises it and where they're seated. For the next 15 minutes, the room is silent except for the audio from the footage. The trainees watch as Malik's repeated attempts to report the burning smell are dismissed as Vanessa cancels call buttons without investigation, as Tyler himself hesitates to challenge his senior colleague despite knowing protocol requires checking all reported concerns. When the footage reaches the critical moment, smoke becoming visible and multiple passengers confirming the issue, several trainees shift uncomfortably in their seats. By the time the captain announces the emergency diversion, the tension in the training room is palpable. Tyler pauses the video. Questions so far. A young woman in the front row raises her hand. Was the passenger in 28B really just a regular teenager? The way he identified the problem seemed professional. Good observation, Tyler acknowledges. That's an important part of the story we'll get to. Anyone else? The senior flight attendant violated at least 3 safety protocols, a trainee in the back points out. Failure to investigate a reported smell-canceling call buttons without response, and dismissing repeated passenger concerns about the same issue. Correct, Tyler confirms. And what was my error in this situation? The room falls quiet as the trainees consider this self-criticism from their instructor. You deferred to seniority instead of following protocol, another trainee finally offers. You knew something should be checked but didn't insist when she dismissed it. Exactly. Tyler nods, his expression solemn. I knew the protocol. I was trained in the protocol. But in that moment, hierarchy felt more important than procedure. That's the culture problem we're addressing with the Reynolds Standard. He advances to the next segment of footage, the emergency landing and evacuation in Charlotte. The trainees watch the controlled chaos of passengers exiting via slides, emergency vehicles surrounding the aircraft maintenance personnel examining the damaged wall panel. Then comes the moment of revelation captured clearly on the tarmac cameras. Lisa Dawson's arrival, her search for Reynolds. The shock on Vanessa's face as she realizes who Malik is. The visible reactions of crew members as they understand they've been dismissing the son of SkyLink's founder and CEO. Wait, a trainee interrupts. That kid was James Reynolds' son. Yes, Tyler confirms. Malik Reynolds was traveling incognito in economy as part of an observation exercise his father had assigned. He wasn't trying to test crew responses to safety concerns. That situation developed organically, but his experience revealed critical flaws in our safety culture. He advances to the technical portion of the presentation. Maintenance photographs showing the charred wiring, thermal imaging indicating how the fire had spread, engineering reports detailing how close the situation came to becoming catastrophic. The official investigation confirmed that early intervention would have prevented the emergency landing, Tyler explains. If Malik's first report had been taken seriously, maintenance could have addressed the issue during a normal gate stop. Instead, dismissing his concerns allowed the situation to escalate to the point where lives were potentially at risk. The room is completely silent now, each trainee absorbing the gravity of what they're seeing. This isn't a hypothetical scenario or a training exercise. It's a real incident where procedural failures nearly led to disaster. But there's another layer to this case study, Tyler continues. A more uncomfortable one that we need to address directly. He switches to a compilation of footage showing Malik's treatment throughout the journey, from Karen's mockery at the gate to Vanessa's dismissal on the aircraft, interspersed with clips showing how differently other passengers were treated. The pattern is undeniable, Tyler says quietly. Assumptions were made based on appearance: age, race, clothing, seat assignment. Those assumptions influenced how seriously concerns were taken, creating a dangerous blind spot in our safety culture. A trainee raises her hand, but once they knew who he was, everyone changed their behavior immediately. Exactly, Tyler nods. And that's the problem. Safety shouldn't depend on who you are. Respect shouldn't depend on your last name or your seat assignment. Either everyone deserves to be heard, or the whole system is compromised. As this discussion unfolds, the door at the back of the training room opens quietly. A few trainees glance back, then straighten in their seats as they recognize the visitor. Tyler notices the shift in attention and turns. Malik Reynolds stands in the doorway, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt rather than his travel hoodie, but still immediately recognizable from the footage they've just watched. At 17, he carries himself with quiet confidence, neither seeking attention nor avoiding it. "Please continue," he says to Tyler. "I just wanted to observe." Tyler nods and returns to the presentation, though the energy in the room has noticeably shifted. The case study is no longer abstract. One of its central figures is now present, watching their responses and reactions. The Reynolds standard isn't just about customer service, Tyler explains, regaining the trainee's attention. It's about recognizing that safety and dignity are interconnected. When we dismiss someone based on appearance, we create blind spots that compromise everyone's safety. He advances to the final segment of the presentation, video testimonials from passengers on Flight 347 sharing their perspectives on what transpired. Mrs. Jackson appears, her kind face serious, as she recounts how Malik tried repeatedly to alert the crew about the burning smell. Martin Cooper describes watching the situation escalate from dismissal to emergency. Others share similar accounts, creating a comprehensive picture of how a culture of selective listening nearly led to disaster. The final testimonial comes from Vanessa Taylor herself, filmed during her retraining after a 3-month suspension. Her usual composure is gone, replaced by genuine remorse as she addresses the camera directly. "I made assumptions based on appearance," she admits. "I judged a passenger's credibility by his age, his clothes, his seat assignment. That judgment clouded my professional responsibility and created a dangerous situation. I'm sharing this because I don't want any other crew member to make the same mistake I did." As the video concludes, Tyler turns to address the trainees once more. The Reynolds standard isn't about punishing mistakes. It's about creating a culture where we recognize our biases and don't allow them to override protocols, where we listen to every concern with equal seriousness, where safety truly is non-negotiable. From the back of the room, Malik steps forward. The trainees watch him with a mixture of curiosity and respect as he joins Tyler at the front. Mr. Reynolds has agreed to take some questions, Tyler explains. This is a unique opportunity to hear directly from someone whose experience helped reshape our entire approach to safety culture. For a moment, no one speaks, perhaps intimidated by addressing the CEO's son directly. Then a trainee raises her hand. How did it feel when they kept dismissing your concerns? Weren't you tempted to just tell them who you were? Malik considers the question thoughtfully. I was frustrated, certainly, but revealing my identity wouldn't have addressed the real problem. If the crew only listened because of my last name, that would just reinforce a culture where some voices matter more than others. Another trainee asks, do you think what happened was because of your race, your age, or your seat assignment? Probably all three. Malik answers honestly, but trying to isolate which factor mattered most misses the point. What matters is that judgments were made based on appearance rather than the substance of what I was reporting. In aviation, that creates dangerous blind spots. A trainee in the back raises his hand. What would you have done differently if you were in Vanessa's position? Followed protocol. Malik replies without hesitation. Every reported smell should be investigated regardless of who reports it or how unlikely it seems. That's not just company policy, it's basic aviation safety. The protocols exist precisely because they remove the need for judgment calls about who to take seriously. The questions continue for several minutes with Malik answering each one thoughtfully. Despite his youth, his understanding of aviation systems and safety culture impresses the trainees. It becomes clear that this isn't just the CEO's son leveraging a family connection. This is someone with genuine knowledge and insight. As the session approaches its conclusion, Malik addresses the group one final time. I didn't come here today to remind you who my father is, he says, his voice quiet but carrying clearly through the room. I came because what happened on Flight 347 revealed something important that all of us need to understand. Safety isn't maintained by technology alone, it's maintained by people making choices. Choosing to listen. Choosing to investigate. Choosing to take every concern seriously regardless of its source. He pauses, making eye contact with several trainees before continuing. First class isn't where you sit, it's how you treat others when no one's watching. Remember that, and you'll uphold the standard that keeps everyone safe. As Malik concludes, the trainees rise in spontaneous applause, not because he's the owner's son, but because his words have resonated with the values that drew many of them to aviation in the first place. Tyler steps forward as Malik prepares to leave. Thank you for sharing your perspective, he says, extending his hand. Malik shakes it firmly. You're doing good work here, he says. This training will save lives. As Malik exits, Tyler turns back to the trainees. The program you're part of today exists because one passenger refused to be silenced when he saw something wrong. Your challenge is to create an environment where that kind of courage is never necessary, where every concern is heard the first time every time. He advances to the final slide, a photograph of SkyLink's newly redesigned cabin safety card, which now includes a prominent message. Every passenger concern will be taken seriously. Your safety is our priority. This isn't just a slogan, Tyler concludes. It's a promise. And starting today, keeping that promise is your responsibility. As the session ends and the trainees file out, many of them discussing what they've heard, it's clear that the Reynolds Standard is more than just a training program. It's becoming embedded in the DNA of the airline, a fundamental shift in how safety and service are conceptualized and delivered. And in the coming months, as these newly trained crew members take to the skies, passengers will begin to notice the difference. Not just in how concerns are handled, but in the entire atmosphere of the cabin, an environment where dignity and safety go hand in hand, reinforcing rather than competing with each other. The transformation of SkyLink is just beginning, but its impact will eventually extend far beyond one airline, inspiring changes throughout an industry that has sometimes lost sight of the human factors underlying its impressive safety record. All because a teenager in a hoodie refused to stay silent when he knew something was wrong. 1 year after Flight 347's emergency landing, the professional landscape at SkyLink Airlines has transformed in ways few could have anticipated. Karen Walsh no longer stands at the gate scanning boarding passes with barely concealed impatience. After completing the 3-month retraining program, she requested a transfer to the Customer Experience Analytics team. Now she works behind the scenes reviewing passenger feedback and identifying patterns that might indicate bias or inconsistency in service delivery. It's ironic, she tells a colleague as they review the weekly metrics. I spent 12 years at the gate thinking I knew everything about passenger interactions. Now I realize I was only seeing what I expected to see. Her expertise proves unexpectedly valuable in her new role. Having spent years making the very judgments they're now trying to correct, she recognizes patterns that others might miss. When gate agents consistently rate certain passenger demographics as difficult or demanding, Karen identifies the bias immediately. That was me a year ago, she acknowledges during a team meeting. I didn't see it as bias then. I called it experience or instinct. Now I understand how those judgments created blind spots that compromised both service and safety. Vanessa Taylor's journey took a different path. The FAA's investigation resulted in a 6-month suspension of her flight attendant certification for failure to follow safety protocols. SkyLink initially placed her on administrative leave, but as the full scope of the cultural issues became clear, both parties recognized that her return to cabin service would send the wrong message about accountability. Instead of termination, SkyLink offered her a choice resignation with a standard severance package or transition to a ground-based safety compliance role at significantly reduced pay. She chose the latter, a decision that surprised many who expected her to leave the company entirely. I made serious errors in judgment that endangered passengers, she explained to the safety team during her orientation. Walking away from that wouldn't help me or the airline. I need to understand where the system broke down and how to prevent it from happening again. Now she works in safety compliance, reviewing incident reports and helping identify patterns where protocols are being overlooked or circumvented. Her perspective as someone who operated within the old culture provides valuable insight as SkyLink builds and reinforces its new approach. Richard Bennett's fall from corporate grace was more precipitous. When footage of his behavior at the gate and during the evacuation reached the leadership at Westridge Financial, the response was swift. Already embarrassed by the termination of their corporate travel account with SkyLink, the firm moved quickly to distance itself from Bennett's actions. Your conduct violated our core values and damaged our relationship with a key industry partner. His termination letter stated bluntly. The standard of behavior we expect from our representatives is non-negotiable. Now he works as a consultant for his brother-in-law's construction company in suburban New Jersey. His corner office and corporate expense account replaced by a home office and local clients. His LinkedIn profile no longer mentions SkyLink or the circumstances of his departure from Westridge, but the industry remembers. For Tyler Jenkins, the transformation has been entirely positive. His promotion to training specialist was just the beginning. His authentic approach to acknowledging his own failures during the incident resonates with trainees, making the lessons more impactful than standard corporate messaging could achieve. I'm not standing here as someone who got everything right, he tells each new group. I'm here as someone who learned the hard way what happens when you prioritize hierarchy over safety protocol. As the face of the Reynolds Standard Training Program, he's become unexpectedly influential within the organization. New hires and veteran staff alike respond to his candor, creating a culture where admitting mistakes is viewed as a strength rather than a weakness. Elena Rodriguez's career trajectory has similarly accelerated. As passenger advocacy coordinator, she developed the anonymous reporting system that allows staff to flag concerning behaviors without fear of retaliation. The system quickly proved its value, identifying pattern issues that might otherwise have gone unaddressed until they escalated to serious incidents. The silence breaker, some colleagues call her a nickname she accepts with quiet pride. Having once remained silent in the face of wrongdoing, she now creates spaces where others can speak up safely. What I've learned, she explains during a leadership development seminar, is that changing a culture isn't just about stopping negative behaviors. It's about actively encouraging positive ones. We need to celebrate the crew member who questions a dismissive response, the gate agent who takes extra time with a confused passenger, the supervisor who listens to concerns from junior staff. Her Spanish language training initiative has been particularly successful, addressing a gap in service that disproportionately affected Hispanic passengers. By ensuring crew members can understand safety concerns expressed in Spanish, she's eliminated a communication barrier that could have serious safety implications. Beyond these individual transformations, SkyLink itself has evolved. The Reynolds standard has expanded beyond training to influence hiring practices, performance evaluations, and promotion criteria. Emotional intelligence and demonstrated commitment to equitable treatment are now weighted as heavily as technical skills and experience. The airline's competitors have taken notice. As SkyLink's safety ratings and customer satisfaction scores climb, other carriers begin implementing similar programs. Industry publications run features on the SkyLink revolution, analyzing how a near disaster transformed into an opportunity for company-wide renewal. At an industry conference in Dallas, James Reynolds addresses a room full of aviation executives sharing the lessons learned from Flight 347. The greatest threat to aviation safety isn't mechanical failure, he tells them. It's the human tendency to make assumptions, to selectively listen to value some voices over others. When we create cultures where certain passengers are taken less seriously based on appearance or seat assignment, we're not just compromising service, we're compromising safety itself. The message resonates beyond airlines. Hotels, restaurants, retail chains, businesses across the service sector begin examining their own practices, recognizing that the dynamics revealed by Flight 347 aren't unique to aviation. But perhaps the most significant professional consequence unfolds quietly without press releases or industry accolades. Throughout SkyLink, from corporate headquarters to airport gates, employees begin to understand that dignity and safety aren't separate priorities competing for attention. They're interconnected elements of the same fundamental commitment to valuing every human being equally. And that understanding, more than any policy or procedure, is what truly transforms the organization. 1 year after Flight 347, James and Malik Reynolds sit at a corner table in Marcel's, an upscale steakhouse in downtown Atlanta. The restaurant buzzes with the usual weeknight energy, business deals being negotiated over perfectly cooked ribeyes, friends celebrating milestones, couples marking anniversaries. At the Reynolds table, it's a quieter celebration, the 1-year anniversary of what they now call the Awakening, the day SkyLink was forced to confront the gap between its stated values and its lived reality. 2 unexpected lessons, James says, raising his glass of sparkling water. Malik meets the toast with his own glass, and to having the courage to learn from them. At 55, James Reynolds carries himself with the quiet confidence of a man who has built something substantial from nothing. His charcoal suit is impeccable but understated, quality evident in the details rather than flashy labels. His eyes, however, reveal a weariness that wasn't there a year ago, the weight of confronting difficult truths about the company he built. Malik, now 18, has grown an inch taller since Flight 347. His casual button-down and slacks have replaced the hoodie and jeans from that day, but his observant demeanor remains unchanged. What has evolved is a new purposefulness in his bearing, the transformation from observer to change agent, evident in how he carries himself. "Your mother would be proud of you," James says after they've ordered. She always said you had her eyes and my stubborn streak. Malik smiles at the mention of the mother he lost to cancer when he was 10. She's the one who taught me to speak up. Remember how she would always say, if you see something wrong and stay silent, you're part of the problem. James finishes his expression softening with the memory. Grace never did believe in keeping quiet when something needed saying. They talk about the changes of the past year. Not just the professional transformations at SkyLink, but the personal journey they've both undertaken. For James, it meant confronting the reality that the company culture had drifted from the values he thought he'd instilled. For Malik, it meant stepping into a more public role than he'd ever anticipated at 18. I never wanted to use the Reynolds name that way, Malik admits as their entrees arrive. After Mom died, I just wanted to be normal. Not the CEO's son, not the heir to SkyLink, just Malik. I know James acknowledges. That's why I never pushed you toward the business side. Your engineering passion was your own, not something I imposed. But now, Malik gestures vaguely encompassing the changes of the past year. Now you're leading the new passenger experience division at 18, James finishes with a hint of pride. Creating systems that will eventually transform not just our airline, but potentially the entire industry. Malik's new role had evolved organically in the aftermath of Flight 347. His detailed observations combined with his engineering mindset provided unique insights into how passenger experience and safety culture intersect. What began as suggestions during the investigation became a formal proposal for a dedicated division focused on viewing the entire passenger journey through a safety and dignity lens. The engineering team still thinks I'm too young, Malik says with a slight smile. They're not wrong. They thought I was too young to run an airline at 30 James counters, too inexperienced, too idealistic, too... He hesitates, then adds quietly, too black, though they never said that part aloud. They sit with that truth for a moment, both aware of the additional layers of judgment Malik faced on Flight 347 because of his race. It's something they've discussed more openly since the incident, the reality that in America, a young black man in a hoodie triggers assumptions that a young white man in identical clothing might not. How are you handling the public side of things? James asks finally. The spotlight was never part of the plan. Since the story of Flight 347 became public, first through industry channels, then via mainstream media, Malik has found himself reluctantly famous. A teenager who stood up to authority, whose persistence potentially saved an aircraft, whose experience exposed biases that could have had catastrophic consequences. It's a narrative that resonates far beyond aviation circles. It's strange, Malik admits. People recognize me, sometimes want to take pictures. A kid at Georgia Tech asked me to speak to their engineering society last month. Did you? Malik nods. It seemed important. Not to talk about being James Reynolds' son, but to talk about the engineering aspects. How interconnected aircraft systems are, how a small electrical issue can escalate, if not addressed promptly. And the human factors James asks, knowing his son well enough to anticipate the answer. Those too Malik acknowledges. How bias creates blind spots. How assumptions override protocols. How the most dangerous failures often happen not because people don't know what to do, but because they selectively decide when to do it. They fall silent as the waiter refills their water glasses. When he's gone, James leans forward slightly. I still think about what could have happened. He admits, his voice lower. If the fire had reached the oxygen line, if you hadn't been so persistent, if Tyler hadn't finally checked despite Vanessa's dismissal. But it didn't happen. Malik reminds him, and now the systems are changing to ensure it can't happen that way again. James studies his son's face, pride mingling with a father's perpetual concern. You know you don't have to carry this. You're 18. You could be focusing on college, on normal teenage things. "What's normal?" Malik asks with a slight smile. "Besides, I'm still planning for MIT next fall." This isn't instead of engineering. It's applying engineering thinking to organizational culture. Seeing the patterns, identifying the failure points, designing better systems. As they finish their meal, the conversation shifts to Malik's ongoing work. His regular economy flights on SkyLink routes, continuing to observe and document the passenger experience from every angle. Despite his now public identity, he still travels without fanfare, still experiences the reality of commercial aviation without the buffer of privilege. "I was on the Chicago route last week," he tells his father, middle seat in row 34, and James asks, curious about what his son observed. "The difference is remarkable," Malik says. "Not just in how I was treated. They didn't know who I was until boarding was complete, but in the entire atmosphere of the cabin. The crew was consistently respectful to everyone, responsive to all call buttons, thorough in safety checks." "One flight isn't a pattern," James cautions, ever the data-driven CEO. "I've done 12 flights in the past month," Malik counters. Different routes, different crews. The pattern holds. The Reynolds standard is becoming real practice, not just a training program. As they walk out of the restaurant into the warm Atlanta evening, father and son pause for a moment, looking up at the SkyLink logo illuminated atop the company headquarters a few blocks away. "Your mother used to say that the true measure of a person isn't how they handle success," James says quietly. "It's how they respond when confronted with their own failures." Malik nods, understanding the reference. In the year since Flight 347, SkyLink hasn't hidden from what happened or attempted to minimize its significance. Instead, the company has faced it directly, using the incident as a catalyst for genuine transformation. "I still fly economy regularly," Malik says as they reach James's car. "That's where we learn the most." James smiles, recognizing his own words from a year ago coming back to him through his son. "And what have you learned beyond the professional changes we've implemented?" Malik considers the question carefully before answering. "That dignity isn't a service tier. That safety depends on listening to every voice. And that real change happens not because of one dramatic incident, but because of the quiet, consistent choices people make every day afterward." As they drive through the Atlanta night, the conversation continues. Father and son, CEO and future engineer. Two men forever changed by the day assumptions and appearances nearly led to disaster at 35,000 feet. 6 months later, Malik boards SkyLink Flight 892 from Atlanta to Chicago. As always, he travels in economy, not as a test or an exercise anymore, but as his standard practice. Today, he's in 32B, a middle seat in the rear section of the Boeing 737. The boarding process flows smoothly, efficiently. Gate agents greet each passenger with the same respectful tone regardless of boarding group or ticket class. There's no mockery, no dismissive gestures, no visible hierarchy of worth based on seat assignments. As Malik settles into his seat, he notices the passenger beside him, an elderly black woman with silver hair and kind eyes that seem strangely familiar. "Well, look who it is," she says with a warm smile. "I never forget a face, especially one that might have saved my life." Malik blinks in surprise, then recognition dawns. Mrs. Jackson, from Flight 347. The very same, she confirms, extending her hand. "Though I'm in the aisle seat this time, these old bones need a little more room to stretch. Their unexpected reunion brings genuine delight to both." Mrs. Jackson has been visiting her daughter in Atlanta and is returning home to Chicago. Malik is heading to a meeting with SkyLink's Midwestern operations team, continuing the implementation of the Reynolds standard across all regional hubs. "How wonderful to see you again," Malik says sincerely. "I've thought about you, often wondered how you were doing." "I'm still flying, as you can see," Mrs. Jackson replies with a chuckle. "Though I must say the experience has improved considerably since our last shared flight." As if to illustrate her point, a flight attendant approaches their row. "Good morning, Mrs. Jackson, Mr. Reynolds." She greets them both with equal warmth. Can I help you get settled before we depart? There's no special treatment, no excessive deference upon recognizing Malik, just the same professional courtesy extended to every passenger. It's exactly as it should be, and Malik notes this with quiet satisfaction. We're fine, thank you, Mrs. Jackson responds. Just catching up with my young friend here. We have history, you know. The flight attendant smiles and continues down the aisle, checking on other passengers with the same attentive manner. They know who you are now, Mrs. Jackson observes after she's gone. That's different. Yes, Malik acknowledges. Though I still travel unannounced most of the time, the goal is for everyone to receive this level of service, not just the CEO's son. As boarding completes and the aircraft prepares for departure, Malik observes the cabin crew in action. Their movements are efficient but unhurried, their interactions consistently respectful across all sections of the aircraft. When a passenger in row 28 has a question about the safety card, the response is thorough and patient. When a call button illuminates in economy, the response is prompt. You've changed things, Mrs. Jackson says, watching him observe the crew. I fly regularly and I notice the difference. Not just on SkyLink, though you're setting the standard. Other airlines are starting to follow your lead. It's not just me, Malik demurs. It's my father, the executive team people like Tyler who've embraced the new approach. And it's passengers like you who speak up when things aren't right. Still, she insists it took someone refusing to be silenced. That was you, young man. The flight progresses smoothly. During the beverage service, Malik notes that the crew maintains the same friendly demeanor throughout the cabin. There's no rush through economy, no preferential pacing that prioritizes certain sections over others. When Malik presses his call button to request water later in the flight, the response is immediate. The attending crew member doesn't check his seat number first or visibly triage the request based on cabin location. Throughout the journey, Malik makes mental notes, not of deficiencies to report, but of improvements to acknowledge. The culture shift is becoming evident in countless small interactions that collectively create a completely different atmosphere. As the aircraft begins its descent into Chicago, Mrs. Jackson turns to Malik once more. My grandson is studying engineering at Illinois Tech, she says. He read about what happened on our flight, about your background in aviation engineering. You're something of a hero to him. I'm just a student myself, Malik replies, slightly uncomfortable with the characterization. You're more than that, Mrs. Jackson counters gently. You're a reminder that one voice can make a difference, especially when that voice refuses to be dismissed. After landing, as passengers prepare to deplane, Malik helps Mrs. Jackson retrieve her carry-on bag from the overhead bin. They exit together, continuing their conversation as they walk through the jetway. Will you be in Chicago long? She asks. Just overnight, Malik explains. Meetings tomorrow, then back to Atlanta in the evening. Well, if you ever need a home-cooked meal while you're in town, you call me. She insists, pressing a card with her contact information into his hand. Any young man who stands up for what's right deserves some proper food. As they part ways in the terminal, Malik feels a sense of completion, a circle somehow closed by this chance encounter. Flight 347 had been a turning point not just for SkyLink, but for him personally. The moment when observation gave way to action, when his father's lessons about leadership became lived experience rather than abstract principles. His phone buzzes with a text from his father. Meeting confirmed with Chicago team. How was the flight? Malik smiles as he types his response. The system is working. People feel it. 3 simple sentences that encompass everything they've worked toward since that day a year and a half ago when assumptions and appearances nearly led to disaster. As he makes his way through the terminal, Malik observes other airlines' gates, noting differences and similarities in passenger treatment. The competitive advantage of SkyLink's approach is becoming evident. Passengers notice when they're treated with consistent dignity, when their concerns are taken seriously, regardless of appearance or seat assignment. But beyond business metrics and competitive positioning, Malik understands the more fundamental truth that dignity isn't a luxury feature to be parceled out selectively. It's a baseline requirement for any organization that values both safety and humanity. And as he heads toward his meeting with the Chicago team, Malik carries not just the lessons of Flight 347, but the living proof that one voice, when persistent and clear, can truly change systems that seem immovable. The teenager in the hoodie who refused to be silenced has helped transform an airline and industry, and perhaps most importantly, the daily experience of thousands of passengers who will never know his name, but will benefit from his courage. This story isn't just about a CEO's son or an airline's transformation. It's about the power each of us holds when we refuse to accept being dismissed, when we insist that safety and dignity are non-negotiable, when we stand firm in the knowledge that what we observe matters, regardless of who we are or how others perceive us. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey from mockery to transformation. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of courage, dignity, and positive change. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination based on appearance? Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that one person speaking up can truly change an entire industry. Until next time, remember, respect isn't a premium service. It's the baseline we all deserve.